very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us this Saturday morning for part 2 of UNSTUCK 2020. If you can hear me, please let us know, and let us know where you're joining us from in the chat box below. It's such a privilege to be connecting with you this morning. My name is 𝗙𝗧𝗏𝗏. I am so blessed to be here this morning, and I'll be one of your MCs of the day. Now, as we begin, I'm sure you've received a forward this week or come across this story in the last few days about a bridge in 𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃, Honduras. I don't know if you can see the image. I'll ask the technical team to put up the image of the bridge, and I'll start. So just in case there's someone here that has not heard about it, the 𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃 Bridge is a suspension bridge located in 𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃, Honduras. It was originally constructed in 1930 and was rebuilt in 1996. The 𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃 area was and still is notorious for extreme weather. So the local government commissioned some of the best minds on the planet to rebuild this bridge to ensure it could withstand hurricane force winds and allow access across the 𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃 River for the people of Honduras. Now, 2 years after it was built, Honduras was hit by a Category 5 hurricane. A Category 5 hurricane is like the highest category as far as hurricanes are concerned. It causes devastation of crazy proportions. Now, this hurricane wiped away roads, it damaged buildings, and every other bridge in Honduras was destroyed. All the bridges in Honduras were destroyed. All of them but the 𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃 Bridge, which stood its ground, and that in itself is an outstanding feat of modern architecture. You can imagine all the other bridges are washed away, but this one bridge remains standing. Incredible architecture there. But there was one problem. The hurricane storm caused the river to curve a completely new path, which no longer ran under the bridge. In short, the 𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃 Bridge, even though it was still standing, it no longer stood over the river. It rendered it essentially useless. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a real life story that gives us an excellent metaphor for the constantly changing dynamics of the markets, businesses, and life in general. We live in a VUCA world. You know, during this period, we have been bombarded with many new acronyms. This one apparently is not so new, but I think it applies. We live in a VUCA world. And VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It describes the situation of constant, unpredictable change that is now the norm in certain industries and areas of business around the world, and more so during this pandemic. I have some questions for you. How willing are we to change, to let go of our structures, our plans, our methods, to respond to the times and do something totally new? Is what you're doing still useful? Is there still any point to it? Is it reaching people where they are now? Is it still contextual? Are you taking cognizance of your environment? Who are you collaborating with? Are you actually collaborating, or are you trying to do it alone? What is your ecosystem and what is it saying? And finally, when your bridge is done, will it still meet your perceived need? Are you taking note of the winds of change? What trends are you relying on that probably no longer exist? The Bible is full of references to God doing new things and making new creations. Are you listening to what He is saying to you, or did you miss the instruction and will now spend 40 years wandering around? Well, it's time for you to get unstuck. Welcome once more to UNSTUCK 2020, where we are discussing access for extraordinary impact. I will now introduce my co-MC, Emily, who will open for us with a word of prayer. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you very much, Daniel. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emily Kinuthia, and I'll be your co-MC for this 9th UNSTUCK Conference. And now, let us bow our heads in prayer. We come before you, Heavenly Father, to acknowledge you are almighty, and you are our source. We declare your goodness and mercies as a promise over us this new day. We give thanks for the opportunity to receive and learn from this platform and surrender our lives to you, that you may work through and in us. We invite you into this 9th UNSTUCK Conference and usher your presence to be established in our midst and cancel everything that is not of you. We declare, according to Ephesians 1:18, that the eyes of our understanding be enlightened this day, and that each one of us is good ground, that we hear and understand what is shared today. And I declare, in accordance to Isaiah 60:11, for everyone watching and listening and engaging in this event, that their gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day or night, that they receive divine revelation and clarity of that which they need to access, and that they are obedient to that which you instruct them to do. We thank you, Lord, for that which you have done through the amazing knowledge that will be imparted upon us today. And we say glory to the Most High God, for we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Again, a very warm welcome from beautiful Nairobi to this 9th UNSTUCK Conference, reporting live from the Sandbox. A big congratulations to you, because you are in the right place at the right time. So get comfortable. Make sure you have a pen and paper, because you're about to take off on the flight of your life as you get unstuck this morning. So I encourage you to have an expectation to receive everything that you came here for as we continue this conversation that kicked off last week. In case you missed last week's conference, allow me to share some key highlights that were shared even as we continue with this powerful conversation themed Access for Extraordinary Impact. Last week, we had an amazing panel of marketplace leaders, and what a transformational, power-packed conversation it was. They shared powerful nuggets around their journeys and experiences as they developed platforms that have impacted thousands of people and delivered solutions that have truly empowered and transformed our society. Our first panelist was Mr. 𝗄𝗲𝗯𝗀, CEO Sandbox, and our gracious host for today. He has an undeniable passion for SMEs, and at the heart of his life's work is a deep-rooted commitment to helping entrepreneurs succeed. And this has seen him mentor more than 400 businesses and entrepreneurs across Africa. Sandbox is a first of its kind for startups and businesses looking to scale, bringing together a conglomerate of experts that would otherwise be out of reach for the average enterprise. 𝗄𝗲𝗯𝗀 shared something that rang true for the season that we're in. He said, COVID is the Chief Technology Officer, the CTO, for organizations today. It has forced people to embrace and take on digital transformation. And really, these words echo so true for this season, because sometimes life shocks you into a new space of uncertainty. How do you adapt to change and shift your plan, not only to survive, but thrive in the new season? Our second panelist was Mr. Kennedy Odede, a social entrepreneur, a New York Times best-selling author, and co-founder and CEO of Shining Hope for Communities, SHOFCO, a grassroots movement which he started with just 20 cents of a dollar or 20 Kenya shillings, and now serves over 1.5 million people to provide access to education, health, and economic services to 11 informal settlements across Kenya. Kennedy's life story is nothing short of miraculous, and in his book, Find Me Unafraid, he shares a very authentic story of his life's journey about love, loss, and hope. He challenged us to step out and serve others with what we have in our hands. Making money or being famous cannot be your end goal. It has to be about service to others. He started with a soccer ball worth 20 Kenya shillings. And with that, he has gone on to impact 1.5 million people. What is your soccer ball? What do you have in your hand? And last but not least, we had the pleasure of getting great insights from Ms. Rosemary Momanyi, who currently serves as the Marketing Partnership Manager for Google Sub-Saharan Africa. She shared passionately about the platforms that Google has raised to support SMEs and help them build their businesses. With knowledge and insights from across the globe, Google has been able to offer access to digital tools that enable SMEs reach their target audiences efficiently and empowering them to scale and grow. She challenges to find our purpose and pursue it intentionally so we can leave an impact. This morning, ladies and gentlemen, we continue this conversation with a new lineup of phenomenal marketplace leaders. I encourage you to have a pen and paper to take down some of the amazing nuggets that you will hear from today's speakers that will equip you for extraordinary impact in your marketplace assignment. I now hand over to Daniel for a rundown of what to expect today.
Thank you so much, Emily, and Karibu once more to the 8th edition of the UNSTUCK Conference. Just a few housekeeping rules. Get comfortable. Your video and your mic is off, so you don't need to worry about miraculously getting unmuted. Relax, but grab a pen and paper and get ready. There are nuggets for you to note down. At the bottom of your screen, you have a question and answer tab. Should you wish to ask any questions or leave a comment, please do so in the comment section in the Q&A session as well. And similarly, for those of you that are following us on Facebook Live, please leave your comments or questions on the live screen and our team will collate these questions. We will have a question and answer session at the end where we will be tackling your questions. Our hashtag for today is Access the Conversation. That's hashtag Access the Conversation. Please tweet, please share, invite your friends and family with the hashtag Access the Conversation. Let's ensure that our friends and family don't miss out on this powerful conversation today. And just a brief run through our program. It'll be as follows. We will have a few remarks shortly by our visionary and convener of the UNSTUCK Conference, Pastor Angie Murenga. This will be followed closely by a panel discussion. We have some amazing leaders who will be talking to us today about how they have provided access and delivered extraordinary impact within their sectors. We will then get into a Q&A session, and that's why we are asking you to put your questions down for us as the session continues so that we can tackle these at the end of the panel discussion. And then we'll have a wrap up and close and vote of thanks at the end as we conclude the conference. A reminder once more, our hashtag is Access the Conversation. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Daniel. And now we shall engage in a short video clip on access.
Pause just for a moment and think of the endless possibilities you can access with a single tap. What if I told you that you already have that power in your hands? We live in an era where access is increasingly preferred to ownership. This is a feature of the gig economy. Christened after the term gigs, large numbers of people work part-time or hold short-term positions. The impact of a gig economy are affordable, customized pricing and more efficient services. Think of the recent disruptions. The biggest taxi company does not own a single car, Uber. Neither does the biggest vacation company own a hotel or villa, Airbnb. The list goes on in music, iTunes, movies, Netflix. And closer home, arguably Kenya's largest bank, M-Pesa, does not own a banking hall. The gig economy is based on flexible, short-term or freelance jobs, often involving connecting with customers through an online platform. The gig economy can benefit workers, businesses, and consumers by making work more adaptable to the needs of the moment and demand for flexible lifestyles. With a global pandemic and the resultant global stay-home and social distancing message, ready or not, the conversation of access is at the table. We are seeking to power a conversation that shifts a predominantly ownership mindset to that of access and to get unstuck from waiting for things to go back to normalcy. History has proven that human nature, wrapped in fabric of resilience, thrives in the face of change. Innovation and creativity are tools that have been used to learn, adapt, and triumph. The famous poet Dr. Maya Angelou once said, "I have great respect for the past. If you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going." Think of the following events. This transformed Kenya's culture and lifestyle, socially, politically, and economically. This era was marked by a fight for freedom and liberty from oppressive rule, segregation, and poverty. Independence was the inheritance passed on to the next generation. Post-independent Kenya. This era was marked by economic growth, and one of the steering tools was the development of education that led to an empowered and productive citizenry. This, together with ownership to land and social enterprise, was passed on to the next generation. Kenya today. This era has been marked by economic globalization that has led to advances in communication technology, trade, transportation, ideas, and culture. Removal of cross-border trade barriers has made formation of global markets more feasible. Wow, so much about access. But that's not all. Join us on the 1st and 8th of August, 8:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. to hear more about this topic, what it means to different people, and how we can leverage it. Access for extraordinary impact. Access the conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me great pleasure to invite and introduce to you our convener and visionary for the UNSTUCK Conference. She is a powerhouse, multi-talented, multifaceted, gifted woman who wears many hats. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Kingdom Business Solutions, an ordained minister, provocative thinker, a certified executive leadership and life coach in the marketplace, an author, a mentor, an inspirational speaker, and a mother. She is also the lead trainer at the Purpose and Leadership Forum, a 12-week program that sets one on a journey of self-discovery towards their purpose and understanding of the privilege of leadership. She has trained over 500 marketplace leaders with diverse global reach. She is a trailblazer in the true sense of the word, and an authentic leader who has stepped out to pursue her purpose passionately and intentionally. She is a bold change agent who goes where nobody dares to, says what others shy away from saying, and strives to unlock the potential in everyone who encounters her. If you encounter her, I guarantee you it shall be the encounter of your life, because you shall never be the same again. Trust me, I'm talking from experience. She walks the talk, and her life's journey is truly one of service to others and she is passionate about equipping and empowering leaders on the African continent so they can manage, grow, and distribute equitably the resources of this great continent. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to you the visionary and convener of the UNSTUCK Conference, Pastor Angie Morenga.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for that amazing introduction. My name is Angie Morenga, your host and convener of the UNSTUCK Annual Conference. Today is our 8th annual UNSTUCK Conference, and it's day 2. We had day 1 last Saturday. 8 is the number of new beginnings and also denotes a new order or creation. We are truly living in a new world order, a new normal, as a result of the global reset that has ushered in a new normal and a new beginning due to the COVID-19 and coronavirus pandemic. Our theme is Access for Extraordinary Impact, which the team came up with last year without knowing how accurate and timely it would be for this season. Access is defined as a method or possibility of getting near to a place or person. It is the permission, the liberty or ability to enter, approach, or pass. Access is given for a reason. There is a purpose for our access, and we believe that we have accessed a season that paves way into and for extraordinary impact. Every one of our panelists today, the 8th day of August, and last Saturday on the 1st day of August, have used their access for impact and for others, taking their eyes off themselves and focusing on giving others access. We find ourselves in a time when the question is always, what's in it for me? How do I gain? How do I gain from what I give my time and energy to? But the leaders we have gathered to speak to us have a different worldview. Dr. Alfred Mutua, the governor of Machakos County, Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua, the governor of Machakos County, has given access to infrastructure to his community, creating impact. He put Machakos on the map through several events which impacted local SMEs positively. He has an elaborate development plan and has big dreams, which he is actualizing for his county. Africa requires leaders who reflect the desires and wishes of the people. Leadership that transforms dreams into a reality. And Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua is one such leader. Peter Jonjo spent 21 years at Coca-Cola, which included a stint as the company's president for West and Central Africa, and was set for greater impact at Coca-Cola. I'm excited to listen and learn more about how he made this transition to create a food supply platform that supplies fresh fruit, vegetables sourced from rural farmers, and processed food from manufacturers to outlets in the city at fair prices and into our homes, bridging the gap and creating access for suppliers, vendors, and customers. There is an ease in customer access provided through apps for delivery, creating a win-win situation for everyone concerned. It's an absolutely brilliant idea, the kind that gets you thinking, why didn't I think of that? Africa has a $300 billion problem to be solved in terms of food access, Peter says, and we are glad that he has started providing a solution, but there is more to be done. Kendi Twiga Derito is the country manager for Microsoft's operations in Kenya. She is well respected by her peers. She's a highly disciplined and driven IT business leader with over 15 years of experience. Microsoft is about access, using technology to streamline trade and commerce on the continent, helping organizations develop strategic digital roadmaps, enabling them to become more efficient. Kendi's passion led her to being recognized as an emerging leader in innovation and entrepreneurship by the US government through the Tech Women program. She's also mentoring women who are pursuing careers in STEM, and I'm looking forward to hear about all the solutions that they have created for us to access so that we can all make an impact. Wawera Njiru Executive Director for Food for Education, is a trained nutritionist who is using cutting-edge technology and innovation to feed the future of Africa, our children. She is unlocking the potential of the next generation by providing them with affordable and nutritious food that improves their nutrition and education outcomes. Hungry children cannot learn or grow. Feeding the students allows an increase in school attendance, performance, and high school transition. They source the food from farmers via technology. They cook and prepare the food and then distribute the hot, well-prepared, nutritious food to students. What an amazing success story. As I reflected on the Access conversation, I thought of resilience because of the unique times that we find ourselves in. Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant, in their book, Option B, have a unique definition of resilience, which I would like to quote. Resilience is the strength and the speed of our response to adversity. Resilience is the strength and the speed of our response to adversity, and we can build on it. It's not about having a backbone. It's about strengthening the muscles around our backbone. The backbone gives structure and support to the body. It provides a framework around which structures and systems have been built around. All the enterprises involved in this year's UNSTUCK Conference 2020 have provided structure, systems, and support for others. Access for Impact requires a solid framework that strong structures and systems can be built around. We need to build in resilience, a strengthening of the muscles around the backbone, the structure, the systems, and the framework. In this season of a global pandemic, we must be resilient, able to bounce back, use our strength, or develop new strength. This is not the season to stay down or give up. This is the season for access for extraordinary impact. Change your mind about yourself. Change your mind about what is possible. Change your thinking, your thoughts, and your focus. Identify your supporting structures and how do you strengthen them? What strategies do you need to put in place? What is right about this time and season that we are in? Many are loving working from home. Others are making use of their time to envision and plan through new opportunities. People are learning new things. There is so much information and e-learning opportunities available. Some are even awakening dormant gifts. To gain access for your next, reinvent, dare, step out boldly, envision, and act. Every ending starts a new beginning. Cycles start and end, and then a new cycle starts. As we brainstormed last year on Access, we looked at how generations have evolved from our grandparents to our parents, to us and to our children and grandchildren, spurred by a conversation we had with SK Blue on generations. One generation fought for the land. Another bought and owned the land and property. But the Access generation are not interested in ownership, just access. I recently lost my dad. And as hard as it is, his cycle ended. And this is an opportunity for a new cycle to begin. It will be a different cycle because he has laid a foundation on which we now as a new generation build on. His life gave us a level of access for impact. It's now our turn. And if you don't do it for anyone else, do it for the next generation. Give them a leg up, so to speak. What has ended for you? And how can you start a new cycle? Lessons learned from the men who built America that will enable us to build Africa. The world was here before. I was actually very shocked. The world has been here before many times. A place of depression, no hope, plague-like conditions, no jobs, food, and despair. The world did not stop, and it will never stop. Find your place in this pandemic and create access. Because as the reset eases, we need you to have found your place and your position for the new. You need to have bounced back and start a new cycle. Opportunities are found in difficult crisis times and situations, and those who find or create opportunities in seasons of uncertainty, like we are, succeed immensely. The USA became great and was built by entrepreneurs who used innovation and opportunity to do things that had never been done. They did the impossible. Africa requires leaders who are doing the same, looking for innovation, creating innovation, looking for opportunities, and doing the impossible. Two men, Cornelius Vanderbilt and John Rockefeller, changed and birthed and created a nation through access to the rail and to energy. Vanderbilt connected the country through rail. Rockefeller created kerosene and transported to the country via the same rail. Carnegie moved steel from making cutlery, making forks and knives and spoons, to building bridges and buildings. And J.P. Morgan partnered with entrepreneurs like Thomas Edison and took risks. Diversify to survive. They kept moving into their next by visioning their future. They had never been a bridge. They had never been a steel bridge over a river, but they saw it and they built it. What can you see in this season? Please see, vision, and actualize that vision into a reality. All these men came from absolute nothingness. They were at the lowest level of the pyramid, if there was one, into unimaginable greatness and wealth. We truly have no excuse. And I reflected, if they came back today, if they came back to life today with all that we have, with the ease of access of doing business, with technology, with global connections, they would surely blow our minds in what they would achieve. We need to delve deeper into the fourth industrial revolution, because the entrepreneurs who have aligned themselves with the revolution of that time succeeded quickly and greatly. The early adopters. They were resilient, able to bounce back from every challenge, embrace the idea and possibility of failure, face that fear and move past it. Because many of us get stuck at fear. This is the UNSTUCK Conference. Embrace the idea, embrace the possibility of failure, but face it and move past it. These men had crazy faith, and we need to have this crazy faith. Try and believe that the impossible can happen. Imagine turning stainless steel for cutlery into bridges and buildings. It's time for our next. And it's time to access our next. And Isaiah 43:18-19, I paraphrased it, but it says the old has gone and the new has come. And you must perceive it, you must see it, you must envision it and action the new. This is the season and opportunity to create a new way, a new normal, a new order, and a new cycle. Do it afraid. Speak to a mentor. Engage a coach to process you through the fear and through the idea. Ask for help. Draw and write and envision it and place it in front of you. Pray about it. Dare. Be bold. Set out and take actionable steps. Break the vision down into bite-sized, manageable pieces. Start moving and explore possibilities and opportunities. We have a unique opportunity to access our next. We have been told by many people, and as I watch these men who built America, never waste a good crisis and an opportunity. Never waste it. Create opportunity through the crisis. See what other people cannot see, but you can see. They said that a good crisis, an opportunity, is birthed out of a crisis and difficult times. Access for extraordinary impact is a process. So allow yourself to also go through the process. And process means that you go through the stages that don't look the same. Refrain from looking for the familiar. The old has truly gone and the new has come in the global reset. as I watched the men who built America, and as I reflected on the word and resilience, I understood that access for extraordinary impact means continuous change, transition, and movement. It has to be continuous. This is the UNSTUCK Conference. We cannot get stuck at any part. We must change, we must transition, and we must move. Vanderbilt sold all his boats to invest in the railroad. I mean, I could just stay there for 15 minutes. He sold everything. Not one boat to try. He sold everything and invested in the next, the revolution that was coming next. He invested in the railroad. The men and women who build Africa must be those who see and change the future in mind. Change with the future in mind, sorry. The men and women who build Africa must be those who see and change with the future in mind. They are billion-dollar solutions waiting for us to gain access and make extraordinary impact. It is truly time. Africa requires new leaders who think and act differently. Leaders who think access for impact, including others. Leaders who take their eyes off themselves and place them on the plight of others and create opportunity, hope, and remove every hindrance so that we can all succeed. I have my own access for impact story. In 2007, I left the norm and started on a journey that led to the formation of the Purpose and Leadership Forum, popularly known as PLF, birthed from my great desire to share what I was learning about God's culture and his way of leadership with others. I have run, by God's grace, 30 cohorts for the last 10 years in Kenya, and 7 cohorts in Uganda, 13 in Tanzania, and 4 in Switzerland and France. In 2019, I felt that we should stop running the cohorts as was and record the program, popularly known as PLF, and put it online so that there would be more people who could consume it, and they would have access to even more people. More people will be able to access this program if it was online, and give the flexibility for an on-demand, self-paced experience, not knowing that it would be the shift that was needed for our next. We officially launched PLF Online last Saturday, but here is an introduction for you today. Please watch the video, after which we will join the panel for an unstucking conversation on access for extraordinary impact. Hi everyone, my name is Angie Morenga. By God's grace, the founder and CEO and lead trainer of Kingdom Business Solutions, which hosts the Purpose and Leadership Forum. So PLF is, as we popularly call it, is now going online. So yay! We're getting with the times and getting with the program. And it's really great for access. You know, this word access has really featured in this year. And when we think of access, we think of things like Uber, things like Airbnb, where people have moved away from ownership, but they've moved into access, that you give people access to accommodation, access to the transport, you know, that I don't need to own the car, I just need to get from point A to B. And so I really thank God that the PLF now is going online. It's the Purpose and Leadership Forum. We're going online after 30 seasons in Kenya, and a season lasts 3 months, and we had 3 seasons in a year. And then we're still continuing in terms of the classroom style in Uganda and Tanzania. But online is great. And you know, I had looked into some online courses, and they're really short and sweet. But ours, one of the things that PLF does, it's long, it has a lot of content. We've tried to break down the videos so that you can consume them. But when I was looking at this, I was thinking the whole idea for me to do PLF was for diaspora as well. I think the first takers of it will be the African diaspora, because it's the way that Africa does things that are related to God, I think. PLF is faith-based. It's faith-based. It's 12 steps that explain who you are and your purpose and help you to locate that purpose. It's a journey of self-discovery. This is not where we are going to do the work for you. You have to do the work. So the first chapter really talks about the real you, just identifying the man as a spirit, who has a soul, who has a body, and that's what we want to get in touch with. The second one is about lifestyle. Every great person I've ever had say something or hold an interview is great because their lifestyle. There's something about their lifestyle that contributes to that greatness. So we want to discuss what is a kingdom lifestyle. Then we discuss purpose in the marketplace, because that's where, for me, PLF is a marketplace ministry, and I'm a great believer in that. Every day you're supposed to execute your purpose in your marketplace. Then we talk about vision, because you see, the Bible says without a vision, people perish, but also because whatever vision and whatever purpose you have is actually for other people. It's about others. And then we discuss leadership, but it's not leadership 101. It's about that leadership is a privilege. It's a position and it's a privilege. So what do I do with this privilege? What do I do with this position? The sixth chapter is about fatherhood, is that we really must learn to pass on the genes that God has given us, and we must always father people. So in the marketplace, who am I fathering? In the family and even around you, are there people who are not fathered? So it's not just your direct family that you're fathering, who's around. And then we do kingdom business. So what is a kingdom business? That is not a business that's owned by a Christian. That does not mean it's a kingdom business. I must see the principles of Christianity, the principles of the kingdom in the business. Then there's my favorite, I think, as I have evolved, is the eighth module, which is about models in the marketplace. And the models discuss issues around family, marriage, money, and community. Those are such extreme pillars as we pursue purpose. And then the ninth one is now where we go into the principles of the kingdom, because the kingdom of God is run by principles. Therefore, what are the principles? How do I apply the principles so that I live in a kingdom culture, in a kingdom way, and I express myself and everything in the ecosystem according to the kingdom? And then we have the 10th chapter, which is faith, calling, and purpose. You see, every decision that we make is entered into by faith. And then we talk about the Joseph generation, because I feel that I'm called to raise Josephs. And Joseph is a generational solution provider and a wealth creator. And then there's the final thing, is what our essence is about, is to engage marketplace leaders. They're changed by the Holy Spirit, by watching the videos and the lessons that they learn and what is communicated to them by the Holy Spirit, and then they're released to go and lead in their different market spaces. So that's what PLF is all about. I know that it's a process that has transformed many people to go and transform their world as well, to go and transform on behalf of Jesus Christ. It's a culture changing tool, because it changes your culture and your mindset and your thinking into the way that God thinks. So I really love that. And I love that it aligns people to their purpose and to their calling and to their destiny. I'm really excited. I'm inviting you to come on and join and engage in the Purpose and Leadership Forum. Give us your feedback. There's information on how you can access the program. And yeah, God bless, and let's do this. Bye-bye.
What an amazing story. And indeed, PLF going online gives access to people across the globe to engage in this life-changing journey of purpose and leadership. I hope you have been sufficiently prepared, challenged, and are ready to hear from our amazing panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, mabibi na mabwana, we are about to take off. This is the time to fasten your seatbelt, put your phone on silent, put your seat in the upright position, and engage as we take off. And now I would like to introduce to you our next segment, which I am sure you have all been waiting for. To take us through this segment is moderator extraordinaire, Ms. Joanne Kimani. She is a Pan-African communication specialist, experienced in designing and implementing communication strategies, media management and training, as well as crisis communication. She is a co-director of Starab Lounges, a leading event furniture rentals company, which she founded together with her sister Doris. She heads the sustainability and partnerships arm of the business, which looks at value creation for stakeholders, the economic and social impact of the business operations on the ecosystem, and creating positive and lasting impact on Africa and generations. I had a chat with her recently and I asked her what exactly that means. And she told me her sister makes the money and she spends it. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome our phenomenal moderator for today's panel discussion, Ms. Joanne Kimani. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Emily, for that introduction. I think every time someone hears themselves being introduced, they always wonder, oh, wow, such interesting words. I wonder whether I live up to that expectation. Thank you. And I didn't know that you'd mention what we chatted aside as well. Thank you so much, Pastor Angie, for this opportunity to moderate this panel a second time. I think it's been very enriching for me personally and also for all of us. So thank you for the opportunity. I truly honor you. So welcome everyone to the session. We're going to have an amazing time. And just before we start, I'd like to just recap my thoughts on the panel that we had last week that I had an opportunity to moderate with Rosemary Momanyi, who's the head of marketing and partnerships at Google Sub-Saharan Africa. It was such a joy and such an honor as well that Google chose to talk to us about the plans that they have, some of the launches that they were planning even before the launch. So that was really good. With Joram Winamo as well, who also is a host, or who is our host today at the Sandbox, a beautiful, beautiful venue. And also just hearing their plans about replicating a sandbox similar to this one that hosts 23 different offices under one roof all across Kenya and all across Africa in the coming years. So that's very exciting. And Kennedy Odede of Shofco as well. I mean, from starting this initiative with just 20 shillings and to where he's taken it, impacting over 1.5 million people living in the informal settlements in just 14 years, and all the awards and accolades he's won, and just being so humble about it. So that was amazing. So we've got an amazing panel today as well. We are really geared up to a fantastic conversation. Before I introduce the panel, I would like us to play a video that will also set the tone to this conversation. So just sit back and watch this.
In this COVID time, you know, the way it feels like we've been stuck. There's been no access really traditionally the way we know it. But I also feel, based on what you've shared, that the wall has been removed so that everyone can access. I feel like, yes, we've been limited in our movement, but then again, digitally, the wall has been removed because now we can access, anyone can access anyone at any time of the day.
The role of maturity in access, because you know, there's some of these things that they're all around us, but because of maturity, you know, a lot of us, I remember when I was 12, I always wanted to drive a car, and I was told when you're 18, the car's there, they're there to drive, but you have to come of age. You have to come of age. So just that role of maturity and access.
Access is creating this space where everyone can connect. Fewer hurdles, fewer barriers.
A pipe, by virtue of allowing the contents to go through, will always remain wet. So even if you give, even if you let it all pass, the pipe will always be wet.
Access means entry level. It means allowing people to participate. It means just allowing people to enter something and to be part of something. And it's almost widening the circle so that people can be part of that circle. People who may not have been able to be part of the circle now have access to that circle.
Amazing. So I'll go straight into introducing our panel for today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our first panelist, Kendi Ntwega-Nderitu. Kendi has been in the tech space for over 15 years, having worked for HP, Oracle, Intel, Checkpoint, and now at Microsoft, where she's the country manager for Kenya. Her passion in tech led her to start She Goes Tech, whose mandate is to mentor young girls to pursue careers in science and technology. Central to her passion is her spirituality, her dedication to God, and what her talents mean in the wider frame of things. She has been recognized as an emerging leader in innovation and entrepreneurship by the US government through the Tech Women program, and was this year named a finalist in the Tech Playmaker Global Awards 2020, and also was given an award was recognized at the top 40 under 40 by Business Daily. Kendi is a Santander African Women Foundation Fellow and an alumni of our very own PLF Season 30. Welcome, Kendi. What an honor it is to have you with us here.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm glad to be here.
Karibu sana. Joining us online is Peter Njonjo. One headline described him as an African entrepreneur revolutionizing Kenya's supply chain. Peter Njonjo is a seasoned and accomplished business leader in sub-Saharan Africa, having spent 21 years in various roles at the Coca-Cola Company. Most recently, as the president of the West and Central African Business Unit, looking after 33 countries. He's a co-founder and current CEO of Twiga Foods, a company that aggregates informal retail demand and organizes an efficient supply chain for fresh and dry goods through a technology-enabled B2B platform. Among his many accolades, he's been recognized as a top 100 young leaders in Africa by Forbes Afrique, as well as the top 40 under 40 men. Njonjo holds a Master of Business Administration in Strategic Management and a leadership program from the prestigious Harvard Business School. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
Also joining us online is 𝗺𝗺𝗃 Njiru. 𝗺𝗺𝗃 Njiru is an entrepreneur and a philanthropist who serves as a co-founder and executive director of Food for Education, an organization that cooks, prepares, and distributes nutritious meals at subsidized prices to over 10,000 school children per day who are from humble backgrounds. To date, the Food for Education has delivered 1 million meals, which have led to improved nutrition, school attendance, and higher school transition rates. She's been recognized for her efforts as one of the top 40 under 40 Kenyan women, and in 2018 became the first person to win the Global Prize for the Youth Leadership. 𝗺𝗺𝗃 has also been named among the 100 most influential young Kenyans by Avance Media. Welcome, 𝗺𝗺𝗃.
Thank you.
And last but definitely not least, Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua. For all his achievements, Dr. Alfred Mutua can only be described and referred to as a trailblazer. Having been Kenya's first government spokesperson, he's now the first ever governor of Machakos County. Dr. Mutua is a family man, a TV and film producer, an accomplished author and journalist who lived and worked in various countries, including the United States, Australia, and the United Arab Emirates, where he worked as an assistant professor of communication and media at the prestigious Zayed University. During his tenure as governor, he's made numerous achievements, not limited to health, education, agriculture, entrepreneurship, and a very energetic youth agenda. And as we gear up to 2022, Dr. Alfred Mutua will be seeking the people's mandate to serve as the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya. Karibu, Daktari Mutua.
Asante sana, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, and we thank you for honoring our invitation. So I'd like to start the conversation by just discussing the ownership versus the access question. Last week we discussed this in quite a bit of detail, where we looked at, and Pastor Angie has also mentioned it, how the youth especially are very interested in accessing as opposed to owning. So they want to access the music, they want to access the movies, they want to access the books, accessing transport without necessarily owning that facility. So just very, very briefly, as we get into our conversation, and I'll start with you, Kendi. What are your thoughts about, this whole access space versus ownership?
Okay. Thank you for that. You know, when you ask someone in tech about access, it's music to the ears. But when I think about access versus ownership, I see access as the vehicle to inclusion. Because ownership is sort of restrictive and limits opportunity. When you go to the route of access, it then means it provides more opportunity and it sort of gives, think about it, you can have a private car without necessarily owning it. Yet that was before, where if it was purely for ownership, it means it would be left for the elitists or left for a particular crop of people. But now everyone can have that opportunity to do that. So when I think about access, I think vehicle to inclusion.
That's awesome. And it's good that it's music to your ears. We'll be discussing a lot of that today.
Yes.
Dr. Alfred Mutua, what are your thoughts about this ownership versus access question?
I think it's when I think about access and I think about ownership, it's all about opportunity. For me, people are born once and you die once. You have the in-between, the life that you live. And as our moderator spoke about, you know, earlier on about the ability to be able to live a good life. You know, she talked a lot about the United States. And when I lived in the US and I looked at the US Constitution, it's all based on what they call the pursuit of happiness, the ability to live a comfortable life. So when it comes to the issues of access and ownership, what people want is to be able to live a comfortable life, and whatever that, or however that is realized, that is what people are going to pursue. So for me, when I look at ownership and I look at ability to be able to converge or go and find something, it's all about being able to achieve your dream. So you may want to achieve your dream by being given an opportunity to do things, or by being given an opportunity to own things that you want to have in your life. So for me, it's both are important, but at the end of the day, people want just an ability to live a comfortable life, regardless of how it's given to them.
Thank you. And I know you'll be delving deeper into that as we continue with the conversation.
Yes.
Wawera, perhaps you could also let us know what your, especially as the youth that we are talking about, you know, what your thoughts are, ownership versus access.
Yeah, I think that one of the things is the interesting parallel between access and ownership, generational, in the generational perspective of young people wanting access more than ownership. For me, I think that younger people especially have a drive towards more equality and justice, and more equality in terms of you want something that someone else has. So you want, as Dr. Mutua said about dignified life, you want to live a dignified life. You want to live, you know, you don't want to, a lot of us don't want to struggle like our parents did. You know, we want that good life. And not necessarily all the time luxury, but I mean in terms of, like when I was growing up, my parents used to tell me stories of how, you know, the first time I wore my first pair of shoes was, I don't know, I was this age, I was 16 or I was 15 or something. And in my head, I just used to think, how is that relevant to me? And also, I would never want that kind of life. So I think that the change from, you know, generationally wise, where our struggles are different as young people. And then in a world that's, with COVID-19, inequality has also been really magnified in front of our eyes, where we've seen that. How can we improve access where most people are striving towards a dignified life, because we've seen some people are living it and others are not, and how do we bridge that divide? So that's also something to how access resonates in my mind about bridging the divide between the haves and the have-nots.
Excellent. And last but not least, Peter, we'd like to hear your thoughts about the access versus ownership question.
No, thank you so much. I think the world is becoming increasingly competitive. And what you're finding is that the bar is increasingly being raised every day. And for me, access is about accessing relevant knowledge that makes you more relevant to the world that we live in today. And the reason I say that is, in the world that we live in today, I mean, it means that, you know, information is becoming increasingly accessible to everyone, irrespective of where you live in the world. And through that information, then how do you then consume that and make yourself relevant in today's world? And I think for me, that's what access is about. So I see access as, having that, having the information that you need to then make yourself more relevant to solving the problems that the world is facing today. And I think for me, that's what was most the thought that really resonated with me, I think, as I thought about access in this context.
And actually, now that you mentioned that, it would be good to hear from 𝗃𝗏 Foods perspective. First of all, for you, what does access mean to you, and in the current space that you're in? Tell us a little bit about 𝗃𝗏 Foods.
No, thank you so much. 𝗃𝗏 Foods for me was an idea that we set up 6 years ago, and when I look at growing up, one of the things that we always learned as students was the fact that farmers, and I don't know, many of you would have read agricultural books back in the in the 80s and the 90s. The farmers don't have access to markets. And that became a narrative that was accepted. And one of the things that we started asking ourselves is that, should this be a narrative that we continue having as more and more information becomes available in terms of how these problems can be solved? And one of the things that really hit me is that Kenyans spend about 50% of their disposable income on food.
Wow.
And that's essentially what Americans were spending in the 1870s. That's 150 years ago. Today, Americans spend 10% of your disposable income on food. And should we be spending that amount of money on food? Because it means that when you're spending 50%, you're barely surviving. And the question is, why? Why do we do that? And then when you start understanding that, we actually lose about 30 to 40% of our food before it even gets to our table, which is then factored into our price, or the fact that, it takes so much, at times even 60% of the cost of food is attributed to logistics. So the way we see it as 𝗃𝗏 is that, how do we then access best practices that are out there in the world and help our citizens here to actually access food at a higher quality and a lower price? And that's essentially the basis around, that's a foundation upon which we actually built 𝗃𝗏. So how do we provide lower cost, higher quality food to Kenyans? And that's essentially what we do as 𝗃𝗏 every day. And, today we serve about 25,000 kiosks and mama mbogas every month. And every day we ship close to 500,000 kilos of food to citizens of Nairobi. So that's essentially what 𝗃𝗏 is about, and why I'm very, very passionate about it, because we're impacting the lives of the Mwananchi on the ground.
Amazing, amazing. And it will be very interesting, I think, to hear more about what 𝗃𝗏 is doing, and in particular, what the future looks like, or even just currently during this COVID period, what has changed. 𝗺𝗲𝗏, it would be very interesting to hear from you as well, access from your perspective, and especially coming after what Peter has just said, in the area of food. This is a good place for you to start. What is Food for Education about?
Thank you very much for having me here to actually speak about food access, because I think that, as Peter mentioned, in terms of food access being one of the biggest things that we haven't solved on this continent, especially during, we got independence, most of our country 60 years ago. And when we look at the supply chain of food delivery, especially in urban areas, it's very limited in terms of the use of technology, in terms of how we're automating those processes. So Food for Education takes the angle of providing meals to kids, where I am a nutritionist, really passionate about education I'm very passionate about how children access food because of their growth. Children, as we said, hungry children can't learn or grow, and nutrition is particularly essential for them to grow. And if they do not get the right nutrition, it could be catastrophic in terms of their growth, in terms of their brain development, in terms of even their lifetime earnings. What we don't realize is if the child is stunted, they'll earn around 30% less during their lifetimes just because of not getting the right nutrition. So, and they will have less chances of getting out of poverty compared to children who are not stunted. So we have this angle of using technology to provide meals to kids in schools. So we use from the supply chain, sourcing directly from farmers, producing through central kitchens. Sometimes we use aggregators also during our sourcing and producing in central kitchens, and then distributing the meals to schools. So our market primarily is students in schools, primary schools, public schools. And what we do is the parents contribute for the meals. They contribute 15 shillings. So we're lowering the cost for them so that they're able to get a nutritious meal for their children at a very low cost. So if you go to most schools, school feeding programs are very expensive. It ranges between 30 shillings upwards to over, depending on the school that you're going to. But 15 shillings is the cheapest meal in Kenya right now. So we make sure that the child is getting very nutritious food at a low cost for the parent. And they top up this money. We've also found a way for them to top up very easily. They top up through M-Pesa. It goes directly to an NFC wristband called Tap to Eat, that the NFC wristband kids wear to school. And when they come to school, they just tap and get their lunch because their parents already had topped up. So we're removing barriers, in essence, for children to access the right nutrition they need to learn and grow so that they don't have the ramifications that I spoke about in terms of, impaired growth, impaired ability to make lifelong earnings. And they're also able to stay in school and learn. You can imagine being in a classroom of mathematics or science or any other subject, and you haven't eaten all day. It's virtually impossible to learn. So what we're doing is we're breaking down the barriers to kids accessing nutritious meals by kind of looking at the entire chain of how meals get to schools and making sure that kids are getting the right meals in school.
Amazing. And I really like the wristband idea that you talked about, because just thinking about children, when they're given money for lunch, I mean, they'll probably buy something on the way, or sometimes they lose it. But when they've got the wristband, I think it really helps in the just making sure that they have the money with them when they need to use it. And also just, it's so amazing what you talk about. I think also for the parents taking ownership of this, so that it's not just that they're being provided meals and it's up to you to provide the entire meal, but also that the children are the parents are participating, because then it means that it's something that we're building together, and it's something that has an element of scalability, I would say. And Daktari, coming to you, I think very recently you started to discuss your online mobilization as a key part of your 2022 strategy.
Yes.
So just wanting to hear, not just that, but in general, what does access mean to you? But you're clearly ahead of the game on that one.
As all of us are Africans in this conference today, and we have to start asking ourselves what happened to Africa. I mean, here we are 60 years after independence, and we are talking about feeding our children. We're talking about malnutrition. We're talking about the challenges there. We're talking about the ability to even get food on the table at a very affordable rate. And we still, we have to come to the realization that something is very wrong in the way we do things. 60 years from independence, are our people still free from the ignorance, free from the diseases, free from all the challenges that we face? And the answer is no. I mean, when I was a student, when I did my master's thesis, I studied about African development. And we are told that Africa is the richest continent in the world. I'm using a mobile phone, you're using telephones, you're using microchips, and they're all mined from the African continent in the Congo. We look at the minerals that we have, you look at the ability, the resources in terms of human capacity, yet we are the poorest continent in the world. If you want to see abject poverty, come to the African continent. if you want to see people just following blindly traditions that actually make us poorer, come to the African continent. If you want to see leadership that is actually pulling people down, you want to see massive greed, come to the African continent. So what happened? Does it mean that the way we choose leaders, the way we make decisions, the way our cultures grained us has actually positioned us to failure, for failure? Because we have more than Europe, we have more than Asia, we have more. I mean, look, for example, Japan. I went to Japan. It's a very small island. They basically don't have any, they basically have very few minerals, or actually don't have minerals. They come to Kenya, they come to Machakos, they go to Kwale, they buy iron ore, which is maram. They take it back. They go to Ghana, they buy rubber, and then they put together a Toyota, land, put together cars that we buy here. They put about, yet here we have all these, we talk about access. We have to start thinking about us as Africans and start asking ourselves, we want change, but are we able to initiate that change? Because life is about service. Life is about changing people. So for me, when I got into Machakos, for example, I looked at it, and when it comes to food security, I felt shame that I came from a region that receives more rainfall than Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel combined. Yet we are being fed, we are being given food relief. Why? Not because we didn't have the rainfall, not because we could not harvest water, but because of our thinking capacity and our ability to carry out initiatives that help people. So I initiated a program, a subsidy program. I bought tractors, and I think John will understand when I talk about in 1 acre, why don't you have 3 acres? Tractors for all my wards, they dig people for, they plow for free. I bought free seeds for our kulima. I bought chicken for our mothers. And today, Machakos is no longer in the list of food relief, just by very, very small initiatives that you're able to do. So as we look forward and we talk about access, we talk about ownership, we talk about things, we must realize that the solutions to the problems that we have lie in our hands and lie in the decisions that we make as people. Are we able to innovate and change the way we do things? The bridge that was talked about in the beginning is no longer useful, because yes, the bridge was there, but there was a seismic shift with the earthquake. And so as a result, we've got this beautiful bridge that is no longer underused today. Now, the leaders that we have today, yes, they have brought us this far, they have been useful, but maybe there's been a shift, not maybe, there has been a shift, and it's about time we got fresh way of doing things and fresh leadership, whereby we've got bridges that actually take us somewhere. Thanks, John.
Amazing, thank you so much. And you know, as you were speaking, it brought one of my favorite verses to mind, which says that the builders, that stone that was rejected has become the headstone of the corner. And when I say that verse, I like to put Africa in that and say that that stone called Africa that was previously rejected is becoming the headstone of the corner. So people need to watch out for us. I really like what you've said. Thank you so much. And Kendi, perhaps you could also just chime in on this conversation. What does access mean to you in your current space?
Thank you, Joanne. First, I must say, listening to the panelists, very well articulated problems, which then means a lot of opportunities for all of us in this session or beyond to take over. When I think, going to your question, if I had to approach it from a Microsoft perspective, I would want to bring it from the place where we talk about the mission for Microsoft. And Microsoft's mission is actually that of empowerment, in that we, and I believe we'll be able to project something that shows the mission, but we exist to empower every person and every organization to do more. And when we say every, we mean all situations. This includes the people in disability, who have disability, who are about 1 billion or so globally. So that when we build knowing that we are offering capabilities that allow for third party or different elements to coexist and work together. If I was to bring that to Kenya, one of the initiatives that we have, which we rally quite a bit, and I know even for some of the panelists here, we've worked together with them, is we look at anyone creating anything that brings impact to society, and then where they need technology that we can provide, we work with them. And most of this they start as startups, and then we work with them to scale. So we just need to see what problem are you trying to solve in your society? How rampant is that problem around your country or around the world or the continent? How well can we help you scale it? What we recognize as Microsoft is we have a strong brand. I believe this year we are among the top 3 most valuable brands. So using that brand strength and knowing that we most likely than not would operate with any business or government or whatever doors that we want to knock. So we bring you on board as being our partner and take you to be able to scale. So we consider ourselves highly as a platform company. And when we say we are a platform company, it means we build capabilities around and see how well can we then work with the ecosystem to ensure that we are meeting a certain need. So we analyze what that need is and go for it. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And it's very interesting to listen to you because there are lots of and I think you'll be mentioning later also some of the things that you're doing in relation to COVID right now. So very interesting to hear the space that you're in and what you're doing as Microsoft. Dr. I'll come back to you very quickly about you talked a bit about enabling access and removing barriers, and you know, just thinking about even the most ambitious person that is the most ambitious person that is maybe looking to start a business, for example, or just looking to thrive or even to make an impact in whatever space they are in. I think if the environment is not supportive, then it becomes very difficult for them to do anything. And I think you're an example. Machakos County, under your leadership, is an example of, you know, of providing an enabling ecosystem. So perhaps you could just tell us, you know, add a bit about, you know, what you were saying in terms of what are you doing in Machakos County to provide this enabling ecosystem?
Thank you, Joan. Actually, it's also good to let everybody know that I'm driving. I'm on Mombasa Road. I hope the Google balloons that we were told are floating somewhere will actually work and will not lose reception so that we can have this access to be able to talk about it. So you'll be hearing quite a number of a bit of noise. When I got into Machakos, I think the most important thing is provision of basics and ability for people to lift themselves up. Kenyans don't want handouts, and yes, we've got a handout culture, and our African people really get handout cultures, but our people just want to be given a chance to be able to uplift themselves. When young people are looking for jobs, it's because they want to be able to have some money on the table. So I looked at, let's provide basics. You know, I got into a county whereby I found women who are walking 5 to 10 kilometers per day just to get water. I went to places where husbands said that they were losing their wives to lorry drivers who were giving them lifts so they could bring water to their homes. So I embarked on providing basics, because once you take care of the basics, as Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows us, then you can go to the next level and be able to be innovative and be able to have a comfortable life. So I did something different than what others have done. Instead of just giving contracts, for example, I bought machines, drilling machines. And as a result, I've been able to drill over 500 boreholes, which I run by solar power. So there's no issues of electricity being disconnected. I bought bulldozers, so I've been able to dig over 493 dams and river weirs and laid 450 kilometers of piped water, so that our mothers now have water closer to them. We are not there yet. We are not where we're supposed to be, but we are much better off than we were. So for me, it's been an issue of making Machakos better by providing that ability to take care of the basics. Let's look at roads, for example, as a conclusion. Key road, Biashara. open up ability to people to move, open up ability for people to actually be able to grow. And I was told that the road would cost 1.6 billion shillings. It would take about 4 years to construct. I asked why, and they told me it's because it takes an average of a month to build a kilometer, and the road is 33 kilometers. Therefore, it would take 33 months, and then you add the rains and all these things, 3.5 to 4 years, costing 1.6 billion. I decided to be innovative. I decided to build the road to the normal standards of a kilometer a month, but then I had 11 contractors, divided the road into 11 portions, and each contractor was given 3 kilometers to do in 3 months. So in 3 months, I had a whole road of 33 kilometers that only cost 650 million shillings, not the 1.6 billion that was supposed to have been used, because it was all that corruption was hidden there. And the road is there still 7 years today. It has opened access. And when I got into Machakos also, I realized that people, you know, we live in a country where it's good for the rich, not for the poor. And I realized that, you know, we have all these waheshimiwas. That's why I don't like the name honorable. All these waheshimiwas being carried by big cars, living comfortably. They have big insurance packages. They send their kids overseas. And yet majority of our people, our mothers, were dying on the streets because they had no ambulances to take them to hospitals. They had no way of accessing proper healthcare. So when I was given money to buy luxurious cars, I did not do that. I bought ambulances. And so Machakos, with its 70 administrative locations, has an ambulance. And my people of Machakos have ambulances that can ferry them 24 hours. We have the best response of ambulances as they do in London, as they do in Sydney, Australia. I've added them to 90. And so that, to me, is important because we are touching people's lives and you're providing the basics. And once you have the basics taken care of, infrastructure, you've got health. I have the Machakos Cancer Center. We have universal healthcare in Machakos. You are treated free. Even if you need chemotherapy up to 20 million shillings, it's free of charge. Once you've taken care of the basics, then people can now be better in terms of innovation and get to the next level.
It's so interesting when you say that once we take care of the basics, and just before I bring in Wawera, who one of the basics is ensuring that children will not learn on an empty stomach. Maybe just a quick one for you, Daktari. You've got some stadiums that you're building, and I think you'll be launching the first one very soon. Maybe you can tell us briefly about that, just what you will be enabling in terms of access.
You see, a lot of our youth are sitting at home. They are smoking bangi, they are chewing miraa. Because they have been educated, there are no jobs, there are no opportunities, and the way the system has been set, it's only a few people in different places that are doing it better. So, and then I looked at the world of sports. Sports has a lot of money, but then you find that we don't have playing grounds. You go to places like Australia, where I did my doctorate, they have playing grounds everywhere. Here we don't have playing grounds. If they're playing grounds, they are playing grounds of soil and sand. So I decided that for each of my sub-counties, I'm going to build them a stadium. So I'm building 9 new stadiums. I had built a stadium. I have a stadium in Machakos that I built in 1 month that is used for FIFA games. It's still there. We can do things fast and in an efficient manner. So I'm building these 9 stadiums that are ongoing. We have 4 that are under construction, and 4 will start their construction this financial year. So that by the time I exit my term in Machakos, we'll have 9 modern stadiums in every sub-county where our people can go and relax, can play sports, and can also grow the economy. Because when you build a stadium, you actually grow the economy. When I built the Machakos People's Park, Machakos grew. When I brought in investors by building infrastructure, Machakos grew. So we make things better by actually doing things that last, doing things that actually change people's lives.
To that, I believe that one of the other things that the stadiums will do is that you will be starting academies there where yes, maybe you can talk about that.
Each stadium has an academy, and it's not just an academy to talk about sports. It's an academy to talk about life. It's an academy to talk about where you're coming from and to empower youth. So each of those stadiums, we have built a wing whereby we'll be providing us access to people to access ICT, teach people how to write resumes, teach people how to get into business, how to make money, teach people how to leverage on whatever opportunity they have, how to look at agriculture as the next frontier, how to look at whatever ability, because it's also about life. You know, as somebody once said, if they give you a lemon, you make lemonade. You don't just complain. So we'll be empowering our young people by enabling them to have an access to knowledge, as Bonanjonjo said, an access to ability to grow food, an access to be able to enhance their lives. So that people need to realize that it doesn't matter where you are born, it doesn't matter the state of your family or how poor your parents are, that you can be given an opportunity to make a better life out of yourself, and so that you can be able to touch other people's lives. It's not just about you, it's about service to others, making other people better. Then we live in a better society that way.
Thank you for that. And Wawira, just roping you in after the Daktari has just spoken, that you take care of the basics. So bringing you in, I mean, you created this amazing initiative out of the belief that no child should have to learn on an empty stomach. And this, you know, you talked about the fact that you studied this in school, looked at nutrition and the impact on the children. What has in removing this barrier to education for the children, the barrier of not having food, what has the success been like? I know you started with, you wanted to feed 25 children, or you started with feeding 25 children and you wanted to feed 100. I mean, now the numbers are astronomical. Just tell us, what has the success of this been?
So in terms of looking at the basics, one of the key things to look at is, you know, the things that you can't survive. We talk about your 3 basic needs: food, shelter, and I think clothing. And one of the key things that food education does removes barriers, as I said before, of kids accessing nutrition. So there is, you know, immense benefits to that. We've seen not just that the kids are growing better, they are reaching, you know, their target weights, and they're not malnourished as many were before, underweight. We also have impact in school performance. You know, kids look forward to school. Like right now, schools are closed. They're really looking forward to coming back. Although we are providing meals to them while they're at home, you know, they're bored and they're looking forward to eating the meals that they eat every day. I remember during this time, I was with some kids and they said to me, like, I want to go back to school because at school I get a meal for 15 shillings. There's nowhere else I can get food for 15 shillings. And I remember that kid also said, I don't even understand why kids are in private schools where they pay 40 shillings. Can you imagine paying 40 shillings for a meal? So that child is looking forward to going back to school so that they can be able to get food. And then they look forward to coming to school, and we see that they're able to stay in school longer, because when you provide a meal right in the middle of the day, the child now can stay for the entire day in school. We had a lot of issues of kids fainting, of kids running away from school around lunchtime, where they'd go to the market instead of staying in class, because what's the point of staying in school when you're hungry? And also the fainting issues are not there anymore. And then the school performance has improved. So all our schools, actually, part of the challenges usually becomes that the school become much bigger in terms of population. So our schools grow around by 20 to 30% within the first 6 months of us enrolling a new school. And kids improve their performance. And another challenge is that they improve and they now get into good high schools and they don't have school fees for going to high school. But that challenge is better than them not even performing and not even having a chance to get into the high school, good high schools, and to get into the high schools that they deserve. So there are a lot of, providing food may seem simple, you know, may seem like a basic thing, but the doors that it unlocks for a child in terms of nutrition, in terms of growth, in terms of them being able to stay in school, and then being able to actually get the access to the benefits of education, which we take for granted, that, you know, a child comes to school, sits in class, gets good marks, goes to high school. For a lot of people who are middle class, you know, we take that for granted, being able to have that trajectory in life. But food is able to change the course of a child's future by enabling them to actually stay in school, to learn, have the chance of getting good grades and getting into good high schools. So we've seen children who are now in universities. We started this I started this as a passion project in 2012. It's grown, you know, started working more seriously on it in 2016. When I finished university, when I finished my undergrad. And then now we've seen from 25 children to 10,000 children every day are scaling that to 100,000 next year. So that growth, also the impact goes to more children, as I've spoken about, you know, the improved nutrition, even improved confidence. You know, you can imagine the indignity of not having food. It's just something that you can't live without. No one else can live without. And a child especially, it's very important for them to get the right nutrition. So improve their confidence, making them like school more, and even improving their school performance is something that's really critical. Yeah.
That's amazing what you've said. Improving the outcomes, you know, just giving them an opportunity to have a better outcome in life. I mean, there's so much that they can do just because the dignity of having that basic need for survival has been taken care of. And that's a good place to bring you in, particularly in the area of education, Kendi, because, you know, talking of these barriers, you started 𝗔𝗖𝗘𝗦𝗦, which encourages young girls to go more to study more of the STEM subjects. So that's the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And the belief from your perspective is that it gives them an opportunity and a voice at the table. So quite similar also to what the other panelists have discussed. But let's hear from you about this element of enabling access.
Okay. So, and this is historical, we've seen, and the panelists have mentioned it. We've had leaders or individuals who've brought us to the far that we've come as Africa. It's been repeated again over and over how resourceful of a continent it is, but yet we don't see it in the results. And part of this has actually been in the education sector or the education system, which at a personal level, I'm very passionate about. Growing up, I was encouraged to do the sciences. I was encouraged to love maths. And in hindsight, now, as a person who is in the industry, a person who recruits, a person who works with various people, I've come to understand why the sciences and mathematics are critical, because especially mathematics gives you a logical mind. If you find someone who thinks in maths, what they think is how to problem solve. And that's where sometimes you find when aptitudes are done, they pick people with leaning more towards maths because they know this one, as they go, they will know how to problem solve. Now, if you think about science and technology, it helps you create. Historically, we've been taught, even though we were to just focus on Kenya, how to consume. So we're taught, look for a job. We're not taught, create the job. Now, if you're looking, and there's nothing wrong with looking for, as in I'm employed, as I sit here, I also am employed. But if we just challenged ourselves to go further, and even when we think about jobs of the future, can I then use the skills? And I interestingly, I'd never quite looked at Peter's profile. I love that he worked in the private sector for about 20 years and then uses that skill now to do what he does, which creates even greater impact. And it could be that. So then going back to 𝗔𝗖𝗘𝗦𝗦, I realized as girls, my mother was a teacher, and she would go to mark class 8 and also Form 4, whatever, when she was still teaching. She's now retired. And every time she'd come and tell me, you know, the girls, because you'd write it that you're male or female, they wouldn't see who it is, but she would say the girls always avoid, or they score so poorly in the sciences and in mathematics. And so what they would do then in the grading system, I don't know if they still do it now, they would sort of lower, if it's an A, if an A is supposed to be at 80%, for the girls, they would make the A maybe at 70%. And so, yes, so she made me understand that. And so she told me, if you master this subject, just so that you can be more inclusive, it will be easier for you to actually get a good grade in the sciences and in maths. And if you get that, what that does for you, and which is what I do with 𝗔𝗖𝗘𝗦𝗦, at the time when you're choosing your careers or what professions to go for, you're not limited purely to the arts. It is still okay to do the arts, even though you're strong in the sciences and maths, but you can also choose to go and be an engineer. You can choose to be a computer scientist. You can choose to be a mathematician, whatever. And so it gives you the choice so that you do not lock yourself as a girl out of the door from the beginning. You go to the end at Form 2 when you're making the choices. You get to the end in Form 4, you do the exam. when you're getting into university, you can choose based on your passion what it is you want, which then improves the representation of women in the deciding table. Because if you think about even finance is a lot of maths. It's a lot of numbers. So most would shy away from this. Then you find we then don't have women who are engineers, who are scientists, who are creators, who have that logical or bring the sense into the room. And I'm not saying men don't bring the sense. Just out there, I have boys, so I am pro both women and men. But just having the women round the table to make that decision, to be in the deciding table.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. And what about from a Microsoft perspective in terms of reducing the barriers to access?
When I talked earlier, I spoke about how deliberate we are as Microsoft to build tech that is used by all, including those with disability. So this is a very deliberate route we take because we realize when there is opportunity, if you're differently abled, only 1 in 10 gets the opportunity to actually access technology or access platforms that they can use to develop themselves. So we narrow in precisely on that space to just make sure that there is full inclusion. But also we've discovered as Microsoft that it is a culture. The culture of access, the culture of inclusion, the culture of just that whole growth mindset. So that when you look at what there is, you're not having to restrict yourself to just what can I own. And when you have to then go to the place of access, your access encourages collaboration. Access does not compete, because I'm not competing to have the bigger car or to have the bigger house. It's the experience that I want. That's why I want to access. So it doesn't matter what you can access, because it means I can also access. So it's a mindset thing, and it's something that it's encouraged as culture in Microsoft.
Thank you for that. And just coming to you, Peter, in this still topic of access, and talking of barriers specifically, I think at the time when you started your business, you did face some barriers, or you didn't notice some barriers. I think you said you'd wanted to start exporting bananas, and you were going to do it, but then you realized actually that there were some inefficiencies in the whole food value chain. And this actually made you look closer and decide, you know what, there is a market and there is an opportunity to make things right in the local market. We don't need to look out for now. So maybe you can talk about that, just the retail inefficiencies, all of the things, even the inefficiencies in the wholesale space as well, the food space, all of these things and these challenges that brought 𝗿𝗏𝗏 to where it is now. 𝗿𝗏𝗏 Foods. No,
thank you so much. Let me first of all maybe paint a picture of the challenges that exist in this space. I don't know whether many of you know, but 70% of food in Kenya is produced by smallholder farmers. The average age of a smallholder farmer is 60 years. The average age in Kenya is 19. So the first issue that you have is that young people have moved away from farming. So it means that if we continue with the current situation, at some point, you will run out of farmers who are essentially providing the food that we eat today. Problem number one. Problem number two is that if you look at agriculture, maybe accounts for about 30% of Kenya's GDP. But if you look at banks only lend about 2% of a total commercial loan portfolio to the agricultural sector. So again, here we are saying that, this is actually the mainstay of a Kenyan economy, yet there is no funding that is going into the sector to essentially ensure that we are food secure. Third, the government only, if you look at the total government budget, only invests about 3.8% of the total spend, or the total amount of taxes collected into agriculture. So when you think about it from that perspective, the risk of us becoming food insecure in the future is very, very high. So the main reason around this is because of the structure of our retail. So if you think about it, Nairobi has maybe about 6 million residents. If you think about the greater area, Machakos, Thika, Kiambu, including Nairobi, and we're served by about 180,000 retailers. 180,000 retailers. If you look at places like South Africa, where maybe food is cheaper, they only have about 10 retailers who actually are controlling about maybe 60% of the market. So when you look at that state, it means that, you know, we're facing a significant challenge here. So it means that when you set out to try and solve such a problem, you will not get many supporters, and neither will you get many sources of funding. So when we set out to solve this, of course, you know, you keep on stumbling on the problem and getting a better understanding of the challenges that you're facing. But one of the biggest challenges that we face is that, you know, we have an industry, first of all, that is not very conducive when it comes to startups. So raising capital was a significant challenge. Many of you might not be aware, but at some point, you know, my wife and I, we had to sell our matrimonial home to finance our business, just as we were starting out. Because the thing is that we were passionate, we were committed to the problem that we're trying to solve. But the thing is that no bank was willing to finance us in the early stages. As I mentioned, there's very little funding going into agriculture. No local investor was willing to fund us. So it was very, very difficult. So at the early point in time, you know, it was really tough getting this off the ground. The other thing also is attracting talent. You know, so here you are, you're trying to solve this significant problem that we're facing as a country, but you know, you try and attract talent that would be critical in you solving this problem, and that was very, very difficult in the early stages. So the thing is that, you know, we had to create structures where, for example, a lot of my senior management team are also shareholders in 𝗃𝗏𝗏. So I had to attract them by saying, you know what, how about you guys also become shareholders as we try and solve this challenge? And today, actually, we're in the process of making 70 of our top managers in 𝗃𝗏𝗏 shareholders. Because at the end of the day, we want to ensure that, you know, yes, we might not be able to pay what companies like Coca-Cola are able to pay, but at the same time, we want you to be passionate and committed to the problem that we're trying to solve. So when you look at all those elements, we had to then think outside the box of how do we then create an entity that has passionate people who are willing to solve this significant problem. And today, I must say that we're starting to see the benefits coming through of how we're solving this problem. As we talk right now, we have about 8,000 acres under cultivation of food that is going to be dedicated to 𝗃𝗏𝗏. And of late, you know, we've grown to about 1,000 employees. So I'm very excited that, you know, the company that we started helps 1,000 people finance their families and their lifestyles on a monthly basis. So the thing is that I would say that one of the things I would say is that, you know, if you're going to set out to solve a big problem, one is that there is significant personal sacrifice, and two, you need to be very, very passionate about the problem that you're trying to solve, because challenges will come. And what happens is that, you know, when you're in the trench, when you're in what I call the trough of sorrow, you have to find something that you have some passion for it to overcome the short-term challenges that you're going to face. So so that's been our journey for us, and I must say that we're really excited about where we are and where we're going. And as I mentioned, you know, for me, the most exciting thing is that every month I look at the 30,000 customers, the mamambogas that we empower every month, and I get so excited. And just going back to Dr. Mutua, one of the places I enjoy is a retail market in Machakos CBD, where I find that one of the most passionate women entrepreneurs that I've encountered across our business. And I really enjoy going to Machakos because I just see the impact that we have with people. And I think for me, that is just what's really, really exciting about what I do every day.
And just to talk about the topic that you just raised of funding, that it was initially difficult. Is it as difficult now that you've taken things off the ground? I saw that you did receive a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. You also, I think, also received, you were involved in the GSMA Ecosystem Accelerator Fund and a few others. You raised $30 million at some point. So it seems like it did take off. Very proud of that. But my question in relation to this is, you talk about blended financing. First of all, what is that? And then after you've answered that, I'd like to talk a bit more about receiving grants from foundations.
So thank you so much for that. So I think what I have seen is, and first of all, let's talk about the issue of funding. One of the biggest challenges with funding is that we don't have sources of startup capital. One of the things that you'll realize is that once you start a business and maybe you're looking to raise maybe north of 100 million shillings, actually the sources of financing are there. And there's actually a lot of money that you can raise in that space. The main challenges for businesses is how do you raise your first amount of money that makes you bankable in the eyes of many financiers. And that's where the big challenge is in Kenya. So, of course, you know, I was very fortunate to be working for Coca-Cola that allowed us then to raise the initial capital that we needed to raise. And then it then allowed us to then raise money after that. So that for me is a big advantage I think we had as Trigger. But one of the things I'm really, really focused on today is how do we then build an ecosystem that actually allows young companies to access early stage financing. If you're needing between maybe, I don't know, 10 million to 50 million shillings, how do we get access to that financing? You know, the interesting thing is that, you know, if you look at pension funds in Kenya, we sit on about 1.3 trillion shillings, which is about $13 billion. Wow. And there is very little of that money that is actually allocated to startups. I mean, 10% of that, which is about 130 billion shillings, has been allocated to private PE funds, private equity funds. But what you find is that, you know, still pension funds are not allocating the right amount of money to actually invest into our startups. And on top of that, we have zero allocation to venture capital. So it means that it is increasingly difficult as an entrepreneur to actually access this early stage funding. And what has made countries like the US successful is because ecosystems like what you find in Silicon Valley provide this venture capital financing. They provide the risky capital that allows entrepreneurs to dream and start solving the big issues that you have in the world. Companies like Facebook would not exist today if you do not have venture capital. Now, the key thing is that, you know, yes, you can solve that. And I think that will be the first thing around getting there. But one thing I would say is that, you know, grant funding, though attractive, one needs to kind of be a bit cautious around the type of grants that you access. Very early on in Trigger's journey, we actually got a grant of about 50 million shillings. And at some point, we actually had to walk away from that grant. Because what you find is that, you know, grants, yes, it's money that is given to you, but it means that then you have to then structure your business in a way that aligns to the person who's actually giving you the grant. And when we looked at it, one of the things that we said is that, look, if we take this grant money, because one of the things I believe is integrity. If you say that you're going to do something, then you have to do it. If we then take this money, the key thing is that, does it allow us to then execute our vision? Does it allow us to live true to our vision? And the answer was no. And we had to walk away from that. So one of the things I would say is that, you know, yes, grant money at times does not have any cost to it. But the thing is that, does it align to what you want to do as a company? And what I would say is that, you know, for us as a company, once we are able to overcome the initial barrier, it has actually become easier, not easy, easier to raise money or to access to capital. So, and so far, we've raised about an equivalent of about 6 billion shillings since we started 𝗺𝗲𝗧𝗏. And the thing is that, you know, of course, right now, we're also looking at, you know, how we can raise more capital to finance our Africa-wide ambitions, because the problem that we're talking about here in Kenya is a problem that is actually replicated across the continent. Across sub-Saharan Africa, 50% of disposable income is being spent on food. So whatever we're solving in Kenya can be solved in Abidjan, can be solved in Lagos, Kano, Ibadan, Kinshasa. So all these markets require the same solution. And the key thing is that most of these industries or most of these segments do not have access to the financing that is going to be required to solve the challenge of food access, affordable food access.
Thank you for that. So what I hear you say is the grants are not bad in themselves. It's that you look at what your vision is and you see if you're going for any, which one aligns to the things that you want to do, because they on their end have the things that they'd like to do, the things that they'd like to deliver, and your end, you know that what it is that you want to do. So I guess it's just finding which is the best partner that will enable you or that you can leverage to get to your next best. So that's very important to hear, and thank you for mentioning that. I would also like to ask about partnerships. I know you're big on partnerships. I saw that you had a partnership, I believe it was recently with Jumia and 𝗺𝗏𝗏, and we had the CEO of 𝗺𝗏𝗏 last week in the panel. And you know, it's not just that one, it's several other partnerships. And for me, I think the belief is when it comes to access, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We do what we can do very well, and then we lean towards the others to also do their bit so that we can, you know, leverage on the ecosystem. Maybe you can talk briefly about partnerships.
No, thank you so much. You know, one of the things that we're very clear about is, if you look at the problems that we need to solve around the world, they're very complex and they're very, very sizable. And the key thing is that you need to be very, very clear about what are my strengths? What is it that I'm good at? And focus on what you're good at. And then the thing is that instead of reinventing the wheel and being in a suboptimal job, how do you then leverage other partners to then help you solve the problem that you set out to solve? Kennedy Odede is a good personal friend of mine, 𝗺𝗏𝗏𝗏. And one of the things is that, you know, for example, you know, we wanted to create an ecosystem where we can donate food in 𝗊𝗫𝗏. But the thing is that we don't need to build the whole ecosystem and the door-to-door infrastructure to then donate the food in 𝗊𝗫𝗏. Because the thing is that Kennedy has already done it with 𝗺𝗏𝗏𝗏. He's already done it in places like Kawangware, Mathare North, Huruma. So the thing is that it's just sitting down with Kennedy and saying, okay, fine. If we were able to get this food and we get it out to you, can you get it to the families out there? And if you get it to the families out there, are you able to give us the reporting that at least then provides traceability to the food that we are donating? And that then starts making sense, you know, in terms of getting food access there. I'll give you another example. I'm not an agronomist. So the thing is that, you know, I like selling stuff, but I don't know how to grow it, you know? So, and the key thing here is, you know, growing food is technical, you know? I mean, so far now, I've learned quite a bit in terms of growing food, you know, potato varieties, how much nutrition the potato needs to get, or how much nutrition a tomato needs to get. But what we said is that, you know what, are we going to start building this capability around knowledge around growing food, or are we going to start working with other partners? So far we have people like Crop Nuts who are able to give us crop protocols in terms of how to grow food. Or in some instances, for example, you know, you need to survey a piece of land or and get an understanding of, you know, what's growing in there and what yield are you going to get. So we started working with people like Astral Aviation, who are using drone technology to do crop census, where you can at least understand the yield that you're going to get on a piece of land. We have guys like Cropin from India, where now we're able to use satellite imagery to actually determine what yield you can get on a piece of land before you even invest. And the key thing is that, you know, as we're then building this whole ecosystem, it then helps people de-risk farming, because farming does not need to be a game of chances. You know, it shouldn't be like, you know, where somebody says that, you know, I'm going to get into farming and I might make some money. But the thing is that how do you then de-risk that to then say, you know what, I'm actually going to invest in farming because I believe that this could be an alternative investment for me. And the key thing here is, and how do we also change the perception people have around, around farming and agriculture? And one of the things I say is that, you know, I've never seen anyone who's building a house who goes to the internet, downloads an image, and then you give it to your favorite fundi and you say, you know, Kamau, can you build this for me? You know, we don't have that level of informality when it comes to real estate. And what you find is that, you know, people actually employ an architect, you employ a quantity surveyor, you actually employ an engineer, and you say that, you know what, can you build this house for me? Design it and ensure that you can deliver against this. But why do people do that when it comes to farming? Where you then say that actually, you know what, I bought a piece of land and I'm going to start farming tomatoes. And then you M-Pesa somebody who's maybe a distant cousin of yours and say, by the way, can you go buy some seeds and you plant for me some tomatoes? And when we approach farming with such informality, no wonder it doesn't work. But the key thing is that how do we make commercial farming sustainable? And the thing is that what we're saying is that, look, you know, we have to then leverage partnerships because we don't have all the solutions. And soon we'll also be launching a facility with one of our financial partners around farmer financing. We know that farmers are not able to get financing from banks. And soon we essentially want to put in place this, farmer facility where we can then say that, you know what, if you're a farmer and you're really passionate about it, can you get access to that? So the key thing is that, you know, for us, we're very clear. To solve a problem that we need to solve, we need to create an ecosystem. And that's a challenge of operating a business in Africa, where you're not just building intellectual property to help you thrive, but essentially you have to build intellectual property and then you have to build an ecosystem to support your intellectual property. And that's where partnerships come in place. You have to build an ecosystem that actually supports.
Thank you for that. And I think I'll be coming back to you as well in relation to some of the things that you've said. Just in terms of, I think I'd like to come to you, Daktari, in relation to partnerships. I remember you had spoken about, was it earlier, either it was earlier this year or it was last year, where you brought together partners. So you did bring together employees who are looking for work. And then you also went and looked for employers that were looking for the right employees, you know, realizing that there's this barrier that these people are not able to engage. And so helping them to engage effectively. Maybe you could talk a bit about that just in relation to partnerships, which I know you're also very big about.
Yes. I think, and I've arrived where I was going, so the network keeps on fluctuating. I think the most important thing, the most important thing in partnership is being able to understand that you cannot do things alone, and that this world is about all of us. And that when you engage into proper partnerships, then you are able to succeed. I like the examples that my friend Njonjo was giving about forming partnerships, and especially about access to credit and the access to knowledge. For example, when I brought young people, I brought them and I brought employers and I brought people to train them and tell them, if you want a job, you don't just sit at home, you go out and seek for it. And so people are coming and leveraging and getting together and being able to say that if we work together, we'll be able to succeed. Now, let me talk a little bit about, as you talk about partnership, I was really touched by what we've discussed and what we've been talking about when it comes to issues of food and food security, because you know, I like the initiative where we are feeding our children. I like the points that were put forth about our education and especially empowering our women. And yes, I want to say as a man that women at times make more sense than men. Men have a lot of nonsense at times, and that is the story of Africa, and that is where we have some of these challenges we face. So the more women we empower, the better it is for all of us.
we need to create a society that teaches our people that teamwork is okay and that you can't do it alone and that we need to be able to support each other. There are stories told, especially in Kenya, about us Kenyans, that we have this culture of pulling each other down. And there's a story told about a person who was buying crabs and wanted to buy crabs from Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. And when we got those crabs, when they were being loaded to an aircraft, he realized that the crabs for Mozambique and Tanzania were in a box that was sealed, but the crabs for the box for Kenya was unsealed. And then the pilot said, wait a minute, if we take this aircraft with these crabs from Kenya with a box that is unsealed, they'll all fall out, they'll walk around, and they'll come out of the box. And the person who was loading them said, no. These are Kenyans. You know, Kenyans, when one of us tries to go up, the rest of us grab their leg and pull them down. Unaenda wapi? Come back, stay down here with us. So there's a culture of pull me down that we have in this country. And so it warms my heart when I see a few of us trying to lift each other up, looking at what is happening with teamwork and about getting together with people. So it all comes back to our knowledge, our understanding that we are stronger if we work together. We are stronger if we pull together. We are stronger if we share ideas. And just because somebody is growing does not mean that I am going down. People think that if somebody else is getting better, that you're getting worse, that it is okay for some of us to get better because they can be able to pull us up with them. So that is how I look at it when it comes to partnerships, that our children, our people are not very key in partnership. And that, as I finish, that is reflected a lot in sports in Africa. We tend to do better, especially in East Africa. We tend to perform well in sports whereby you work by yourself. You are an athlete. You are Eliud Kipchoge. You are Henry Rono. You are Kipchoge Keino. You run by yourself. You know, you are a man or a woman. You are Cosmas Ndeti. You are Dereba. You run by yourself. It's a one-person effort with others supporting you. But when it comes to playing football, for example, when it comes to playing games that need teamwork, that need us to be able to work as one unit that performs in an efficient manner, we fail terribly. And I remember during the last World Cup, we were all cheering France. Why? Because, I was cheering France. We cheered Brazil, we cheered others, we cheered Germany, but we cheered France at the end because it had many African players. And we kept on saying, oh, the French team is not actually a French team, it's an African team. No, it is not, it is a French team. Because bring all those African players who are playing for the French team, or African-born players or African heritage players, bring them to Kenya, we will not even qualify beyond East Africa to even get to the World Cup, because we don't know as a country, as a society, how to enhance partnership and enhance teamwork. And so that is something that we also need to, as we look at access, look at how we're going to do that, look at supporting of the SMEs, providing money for agriculture, as Bananjonjo has said, so that we can actually take advantage of the opportunities that are given to us.
Thank you. And roping you in, Wawera, in relation to this topic that we're talking about of funding, access to funding and partnerships, it reminds me of the conversation that we had last week with Kennedy of Shofco. And we discussed an analogy by SK Blue, who was a musician and is now an entrepreneur. And he coined a phrase, or he gave us a phrase that says that what you own, you protect, but what you access is protected. And we talked about that from a Shofco perspective, but I can also see that quite clearly from a food for education perspective. And just wanting to hear from you that when it comes to partnerships, do you feel that, you know, one of them, of course, one of the partners is the parents. They're partnering in helping to pay for the meals for their children. But the other thing as well is, because of how it has grown, there's such a keen interest to ensure that our children are getting a balanced meal, that you then find partners knocking at your door and saying, how can we support to keep this abreast? So just with that analogy of what you own, you protect, but what you access is protected. What are your thoughts about that?
I think my thoughts about, as we've been discussing ownership and access, and especially when it relates to funding. So our funding journey has been, the first couple of years was pretty much organic, very bootstrapping. I raised the first funding to kickstart the organization, which was 125,000 shillings from friends. I literally had a dinner with friends and cooked burnt rice, some chapati for 80 people. I sold it to them. I was living in Australia doing my undergrad there. And with that, they paid me $20 each, and we got 1,250 Australian dollars, which is 125,000 shillings then. So we were able to start providing meals to kids with that, the 25 children that I mentioned. And in respect to funding, partnerships, and ownership, something that through my fundraising journey. So for me, it's been interesting because I am a woman, I am a solo founder, I am under 30, and I've never really been in the fundraising space before. So I was straight out of uni, starting this, starting this organization. And, starting from fundraising here at home through friends, family, bootstrapping, as I mentioned, until in 2016, we actually got our first major grant. Our budget for 2015 for the entire year was 850,000 shillings. So that's how small we are. And the next year, our first grant was around 8 million shillings. So that was a big, show of faith, especially from the funder, and a show of our ability to be able to increase access for children especially, and even for me personally. I think a lot of young people through their funding journey go through, really fundraising is very intimidating, I'll say that, especially because, as we've heard that a lot of times you can't raise as much capital here. And so you start looking for places overseas, and there's the competition between, we've heard a lot about founders and how, expat founders, for example, would raise more versus local founders. And so it's intimidating to kind of enter that space with not as much knowledge about fundraising, but with just a vision of what you want to accomplish. So I think that for me, one of the things that has really stood out during my journey has been things about, learning, keep having the knowledge, and also learning the way the new world works. And I think that's something that, a lot of young people, that's a different world, especially if you've been born and raised in Kenya, thinking about how do you get into that world and are able to share your vision and people to help support what you're doing. So that's something that I think about when I hear that quote. I think so, getting young people to access funding, especially early on, is very difficult. So thinking about how, young people obviously will expect, once I present my idea, someone will give me $100,000. It doesn't happen like that. You start really small and you grow with that. So also essentially giving it time. Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting. And Candy, to you, especially what we've learned about how difficult sometimes it can be to secure funding, especially at an early age. What I know you mentioned that another hat you wear is that you train storytellers, and this is to enable them, tell their stories that have impact and help them to secure financing. So maybe you can tell us that. And also while you're on that, you can also tell us about, tell us about that, and then I'll ask you my question about 𝗔𝗖𝗖𝗘𝗦𝗦 as well.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. So first, let me start by saying we are Africans. Yeah. We go up country most of the time to see our grandparents so that they can tell us stories about how they grew up and all of that. So storytelling as an African is a natural space to be. Simon Sinek, one of the business development gurus, says, if you want to position or sell yourself or position your product or whatever it is you're putting out there, start with why. Now, one of the strongest ways to define your why is to actually tell it through your story. We've had the panelists speak, and I keep looking down looking through as the comments go, and where most comments come is when any of the panelists is talking about a personal experience they've had.
Wow.
Stories bring out empathy, and stories make people connect with you. So then, if you are to wear that as be a storyteller or use your story when you're positioning your business or your initiative, tell your why by saying your own personal journey, then it means whoever is on the other side connects with you as a person. And because they connect, science, then it produces happy hormones on their side, which then sort of favor you. So that if there's a shortlist going back and forth, you find that they just like you and they don't know why. But it's simply because you told a story which was a personal story, which also you allowed them to see your authentic self, and you are vulnerable for that moment, which you may have the skill. All of us, most of us, many of us go to uni or go to school, college, you get skills. The only thing that differentiates is the personal experience. So while at the starting point, you may have almost similar ideas, what builds the passion, what is able to show why you're passionate about it, why you're doing it, is actually your personal journey, and that you tell through stories.
So I've got a business.
Yes.
With my sister, where we hire out furniture.
Yes.
And we've got a story behind our business.
Yes.
So when you literally now for my business, are you saying that you would help me position ourselves to attract the funding that we need through the story of why our business exists?
Correct. So you see, if you are to, I'm sure you have competition.
Yes.
So the only big difference there will be is your story, why you came up with the business. And that is very personal. Wow. And that is very unique. In business, we say the biggest and consistent differentiator is culture. So wow. You may be as big as Microsoft or whoever else,
yeah.
But the one thing that will ensure you keep winning every time is the company culture. Culture is formed by the story of how everything started and what you saw and why you are passionate to solve whatever it is you are solving. So back to your business with your sister, I know probably you don't talk about it because you think it's very trivial. But if you came and you told me, Kendi, the reason we do this, it's because, now let me tell you,
yes.
You know, then you start from that place of, this is what happened. Chances are, because you're saying an experience which was very personal, your passion will come out.
Okay.
And when your passion is out, people come on board with you. And you operate from a place of confidence. So that's what the story does.
And what has been the success of that? I know Kennedy of Shofco, you've trained him.
Yes.
Or trained his trainers.
The people there, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What has the success been like? Which are other examples maybe?
So what I do, I work with organizations funded by the Gates Foundation.
Okay.
With individuals from the Global South, individuals who are pushing a difference in their societies. And the Global South is mostly Africa and Asia.
Okay.
And some of the STAN countries, the Kazakhstan, those ones, Uzbekistan.
Yes.
And we work with them so that we're able to know, if you're in advocacy, why did you choose to go and advocate for women to access education? Or like for Awera, why did you choose to go and have food for students? And if I even was to talk about Wawera, she started by saying her parents used to say that they wore their first shoe at 16.
Yeah,
that must have informed the journey she's been in. It's an educated guess, Wawera. We've not spoken, I don't know, but chances are that motivated her to do it. So by the time she starts the journey from that, when we walk through, we can see for her parents who didn't probably get the opportunity that she's granting, we can see what happened to them. Then we can see the change. We walk with her through the change. And now to where now she gives the statistics. The story doesn't replace the facts. When Peter says that we spend 50% of our income on food, that's a fact.
That's a fact.
But there's also the story when he says we had to sell our matrimonial home for us to get funding. It speaks of passion. And when he says it, our hearts sink. We're like, what? You did that. But yeah, so you connect, you connect both worlds.
Wow, wow. And for 𝗔𝗖𝗖𝗘𝗦𝗦, just very quickly, in terms of partnerships and also funding, you know, are you leveraging any NGOs to be able to support with the initiative? Because these children who you're encouraging to study the STEM subjects may not have the same opportunities as the ones that they are competing against or will compete against on the global stage at some point. So obviously it means that there's a lot more exposure, I guess, with some of the children. So just wanting to see in relation to partnerships, what kind of partnerships are you leveraging for that?
So mostly, actually, I work with alumni, because 𝗔𝗖𝗖𝗘𝗦𝗦 is most relevant in high schools, because as we know, at least most of us listening to this, we did 844 or whatever. We choose the subjects, or we would choose what to drop or keep in Form 2.
Yes.
So if I come to you in Form 4, I'm not quite helping you. If I come to you in Form 1 or even in primary school, then I'm giving you the chance to realize my story is that of a village girl. And I say this proudly because I, Kendi, I'm a village girl. The only thing that made a difference for me is that I was able to access some sort of education. And in that education, my parents encouraged me to do the sciences and mathematics, which then allowed me to take the path that I took of the sciences, which allows me to be where I am today.
Yeah.
So when we talk about then partnerships, if it's alumni, mostly high school alumni, sometimes the leaders in the different counties then show interest, then we come in and we speak, we engage. I have different, it's an initiative that is mostly but on voluntary basis. So I have girls and even boys who are in campus who've gone the journey. So the age gap is also not too big, so that the high school kids can relate. We have then the experienced people who come in as well and tell their story. So yes, you can't do it alone, I can't do it alone. And it's richer when they see someone who looks, when you see someone who looks like you, then you can relate more.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the next bit I'd like us to discuss is about unstacking. And I'd like our team to play a quick video. This is of a gym owner who's recently, because of the COVID period, has looked at other ways to be able to earn an income. So I'll ask the team to play, but the essence of this discussion now that we're getting into is how do we unstuck ourselves from waiting for things to go back to normal? And I'll be looking to hear from our panelists on how they're leveraging this COVID-19 period.
My name is Patrick Namwambo Dale, owner of Fulana Sports. At Fulana Sports, we selflessly dedicate our lives to others through exercise, mindfulness, healthy eating, physical rehabilitation to make a lasting impact on our members' wellness and vitality. As a result of the current COVID-19 pandemic, just like other businesses, we have adapted to a new normal by increasing our dedication to our clients and identifying a few blue oceans. Apart from our normal fitness operations, we are currently selling temperature measurement systems. Our temperature measuring devices are designed for access control, ideal for healthcare settings, government buildings with inflow of public traffic, schools and colleges, places of worship, transport hubs, hotels, supermarkets, and retail shops. My takeout this year is this. Looking at the events that led to the shutdown of our fitness operations, it is a brutal fact that we are entering a brutal phase as a business. It is a fact that many businesses will struggle to recover the COVID-19 crisis for the reasons beyond their leaders' control. It is my takeout that those who will survive will be the ones who have easily accepted these facts. And they have a very strong belief that they will prevail upon this crisis with a long-term vision. Fulana Sports encourages you to access the conversation. Access the conversation and be like Fulana Sports.
That's such a heartwarming, during this period, such a heartwarming message that a lot of people, a lot of Kenyans are looking at what else can they do. And actually, it's bringing an element of creativity. So you find that there's a balance, that even when things go back to normal, when they will, you now have a new revenue stream, I would say. And I would just start with you, Peter, what you think about that. And also, as you talk about that, I'd also like to hear, during this period of COVID-19, what has changed in with regards to how you're running your business. So if you can talk about that, and then I've got one more question for you as well.
No, thank you so much. One thing I would say is that COVID is having an unprecedented impact on people's livelihoods, and the reality is that this might not change soon. The reason I say that is, if you're to think about, I normally like 2x2 metrics. That kind of allows me to then see what optionality that we have as a country and as a continent. If you look at it globally, I think there are two scenarios where you can then say that, look, either we are going to have a resurgence in the levels of infection that we're seeing around the world, or you'll not have a resurgence in the level of infections that we're seeing in the world. Now, right now, if you look at the US, you look at Europe, we're seeing a resurgence, which means that the risk of those countries shutting down again and impacting the export industry that we have locally is high. And that means, if you look at it locally, you can then look at two scenarios. We can either have low transmission rates in COVID, or we can have a high rate of transmission in COVID. Now, what we're seeing is a higher rate of infection starting to come into play. And most of us now are starting to also see people that we know getting impacted through COVID. So if you look at that scenario, it means that the impact of COVID is here to stay. So the key question is, how does it impact people's daily livelihoods? And then how do you then start rethinking your business to thrive in that space? So for us, one thing that we have seen is that consumers are having a lower and lower amount of disposable income. And one of the things that we're seeing, for example, in the retail industry is that consumers are actually moving away from branded goods. And the only thing they're thinking about is price. Yeah. So if you're going to then have that transition in terms of how people then think about how they consume, then the key question is, how do you then rejig your business to then focus on affordability? How do you then ensure that everything that you do is providing affordable options to the consumers that you have? So for us, in terms of taking through this journey, for example, one thing that we have seen is that when you look at an onion, I don't know how many of you kind of know the Mamamboga language, but most onions maybe are sold, tatumbao, you buy 3 for 20. So, but what you find is that the tatumbao onion used to be a big one, but now people are not able to afford that. So what you're finding is that now people actually want a small onion that they can afford maybe at a certain price. So we've had to think about our whole supply chain on how you then provide that. And we had to then start thinking about, how do you then take out cost? to ensure that you're able to provide that food at an affordable price. So we've started implementing a lot of artificial intelligence in terms of the data that we're using to optimize what we offer to the retail. And we started actually thinking about ways at which we can take out cost. And is this bearing fruits? Yes. If I look at the month of April, for us, which was the first month where we were getting into COVID, it was a tough month. We actually lost about 18% of our business compared to Prime. But when I look at this month, we will actually have doubled our business since April during this period. And all this is about single-minded focus in terms of how do we then give the mama mboga, or how do we give the kiosk owner, how do we give the duka owner what it is that they need, and how do we ensure that we take out all the costs that is unnecessary in delivering that proposition to them. And we're starting to see that bearing fruit. So for us, it's about helping people deal with lower disposable income by lowering the cost of food that they can continue feeding their families and themselves during this period.
And my other question to you is, you're currently on the COVID-19 Advisory Committee, I believe.
Yes.
So what are the interventions that are taking place? And also on a personal level, are you seeing any opportunities that we can leverage during this period from where you sit?
So one of the things that we're working on with CS Joe Musheru is how do we then ensure that we're creating an ecosystem where young entrepreneurs can actually start businesses that are helping deal with or helping solve some of the challenges that we're seeing around COVID. And one of the things that we realize is that, for example, the challenge that I was mentioning to you previously around the inability to access financing for early stage businesses. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out is, one is, how do we then impact policy in a way that allows us then to unlock some of the financing that these early stage companies require? And the second thing is that how do we then bring together players or an ecosystem that allows early stage companies to access financing? And that for us has been what has become the core of what it is that we're doing as an advisory team. Just to give you context, you know, we've actually reviewed about 450 innovations as an advisory team since we started our journey. And by the way, you know, I look at it, I spent 5 hours a week just working on this advisory team. And the thing is that, you know, I don't get any compensation for that. This is about, and which is what I told the folks in government, I want to donate my time to ensure that at least we have a solution around solving some of these challenges. But what you find is that through this, we've now identified companies that can access grant financing, and we're actually having partners who are providing grant financing, or we're actually figuring out ways in which we can then say that, you know what, do some of these companies require low interest rate debt, or are there companies that require equity? And the whole idea is our committee only has a 6-month shelf life. So the whole idea is, yes, we're able to do this by reviewing these innovations, but by the time that we're leaving, can we then leave in place an ecosystem where we then say to Kenyans that, by the way, if you have a young business or if you have a young startup, this is how you can access capital. This is how you go about it. And this is a template of how you then access that. Because what we're realizing is that there is money to be invested in the country. The problem is the people who need the capital and the people who are providing the capital do not have a way to talk to each other.
Yeah.
So because of that asymmetry in information, what you're finding is that people are dying with the problem of saying, I do not have access to funding. Well, at the same time, it's about, okay, this is what you need to do with your business to ensure that you're fundable. And how do we then put you in touch with the people who are providing this funding? And the more we can provide that information, I think the more we can actually start seeing the transformation through startups. So that for me is what we are really, really focused on as a committee. And then taking some of the initiatives that the government has, for example, the digital blueprint. There's an amazing strategy that was put together by the government last year. But what you find is that there's a lot of stuff that has been done by government, which is very, very interesting. But the thing is that it's about how it's executed. So how do you then take this, which is a brilliant document, and then saying, by the way, this is how it starts impacting people's lives in a very granular way on a day-to-day basis. And then how do you then provide access to that information to the greater public, so that when people are sitting there, they can then say, okay, I have an understanding of what it is that I need to do to finance my business. I mean, we've now started getting people like from Bungoma who are coming up with innovative solutions around contactless solutions for washing your hands. And the whole idea is the more people know about these opportunities, I think then the greater the impact that we will see. And that for us is our objective.
Thank you for that. And I think, Wawera, maybe just to bring you, or Daktari actually, maybe just to bring you on, I think very early on when COVID-19 broke, I think one of the things that you said is, we should rethink some of the initiatives that we are planning, because we've got this issue with us that needs urgent attention, that there are things that we can always do another time. Maybe you can just talk to us about this unstacking during this period and what it is that you were explaining then.
And it was not even just about rethinking about the things we're doing. It was about rethinking our space, because we've become so dependent. We become a culture of the haves and the ones who have, the ones who don't have the money. And so when they get sick, they can go to India, they can go to Italy, they can go to America, and the rest of us swallow in poverty. So the point I was making is that we need to fix what we have. We need to fix our environment. We need to fix our country so that it can provide world-class services to our people without us having to be a country where only a few people are able to access what we have. And that is where, when I'm listening to Jonjo and I'm listening to all the panelists talking, it's about having a country where there's an enabling environment for us to be able to grow. I remember there was an image that was put there when moderator was speaking, when Pastor Angela was speaking about growth and a new plant growing. Are people given opportunities? Is Kenya a country where dreams can come true?
Wow.
Or are we still struggling with the basics? We have a government system that can actually nurture whatever we have. It doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't experience. Knowledge. But the little you have can it be nurtured more and become better in life. And that is one of the reasons it's very high. We cannot continue being where we were. I mean, after all the Bosnia-Herzegovina wars, the breakup of a year, most of these panelists are over 20 years. 20 years ago was cheaper than Kenya. Today they're in a position to give us loans. Less than 20 years. So what is wrong with the methodology? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with us. God loves us and has created us equal. But what is wrong with the methodology? What is this African culture? What is this culture we have in this country that has made us wrong? And that is where we say we need a fresh start. We need a new form of leadership, people who understand the challenges that we face, people who have innovative ideas. I'm looking at the leaders who are running for president, apart from myself, and I'm asking, in all these people, what new can they offer? What new ideas? Open space, create access. People born in the villages. We are a country where our children are still walking around with no pants, where our children are still walking around with big stomachs. When we live in Nairobi, in Machakos, in some of the urban and developed areas, we forget the majority of people in the rural areas have to decide between, buying food or have to decide between, buying medicine. We live in a country where we're all joking up here, people saying I'm a vegan. I see all these people, when I go joking, they say, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat meat. Well, about 70% of Kenyans are vegans most of the time because they can't afford meat. They're only eating ugali and sukuma wiki and rice and beans. They only eat meat maybe once every 3 months. That's the kind of culture, the kind of country we live in. So we need a revolution, but it's not just a revolution of just the way we do things, we need a revolution of minds so that our people do not continue choosing the same leaders, continue making the same decisions when it comes to political decisions, and then praying to God for change. Our SMEs need funding, as I've been talking. We need partnerships, we need access, we need to be able to open up ways. We need a leader who understands that. And that's why I'm running for president, so that we can get our right that was given to us by God. The Americans are not better than us. The British, the Europeans, the rest of the Europeans, the South Americans, the Australians, the Asians. It is not that they were created by God and were created by the devil. We are created by the same God. We've been given opportunities of good leadership. We need to seize that opportunity. But to do that, we need to change the mindset of our people. And that is where we come together in this Access conference to tell our people that the solutions to our problems belong not only in the blessings of God, but also in our hands. And I want to say thank you very much, Joanne. Thank you very much, Pastor, for this opportunity, and all the panelists. Unfortunately, we live in these areas of COVID. I'm chairing an emergency committee, team that starts at 11:15. So I have to go away, but I'm with you in spirit, and I love what you're doing. And let's continue this conversation, and let's change our country.
If I just have you, maybe just for one quick minute, I think there's quite a number of questions that have come through from the audience. And if it's not possible to answer all of them, certainly, but maybe as we continue, can you answer at least just one question from the audience? If the MCs have it very quickly, they can give the question before then you have to rush. So Emily and Daniel, do you have the questions ready for Daktari?
Indeed, thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Alfred Mutua. And just to pick up on the questions before you leave us, there's a question from Daniel Kyondo, and he says, Africa is the richest continent with some of the poorest people. How do we begin to steer political will in a direction that will see Africa begin to effect real and lasting positive change for her people generationally?
Answer that question, it comes down to very quickly on how do we choose our leaders. If we choose our leaders on tribal lines, then we're in deep trouble. Because, for example, you find that when it comes to people, they align you onto your own tribe. The colonial powers said they gave us physical freedom, but they did not give us mental freedom from tribalism. Tribalism was used as a divide and conquer tactic. We are still using today politically. You are asked, well, who is your best? So your best is supposed to be your tribe. We don't choose what tribe we come from. I never sent a postcard to be said to be born a Kamba, or somebody to be born a Luo, or a Kikuyu, or a Meru, or whatever tribe. But when it comes to politics, it comes down to that. We need freedom for us to be able to change Africa. We need freedom from this colonial mentality of tribalism and thinking that we cannot do it unless others do it. Let me give you an example. If, for example, here there's been a road accident and your relative is been affected, and you run and you find it's your mother or your brother or your sister or your cousin or your lover or your child lying on a stretcher in a hospital dying with their stomach wide open and their eyes are rolled and there's blood everywhere. And you're thinking, oh my God, I'm losing. And you pray to God. And they tell you there's a surgeon who can patch up your child, can patch up your mother, your brother, your sister, can patch up your loved one, and they will live, chances of living are 90%. And they start to wheel that child into theater. As a Kenyan, you don't start saying, wait a minute, ngoja kidogo, huyo surgeon, huyo daktari ni Mkamba kama mimi, huyo surgeon ni Mluya kama mimi, huyo surgeon ni Mkikuyu kama mimi, ni Masai kama mimi. You don't, because you don't care. You want the life of your child, the life of your loved one to be saved. It does not matter what tribe the doctor is, the surgeon is. But when it comes to politics, we start saying, oh, wait a minute, huyu ni kabila yetu, watu wetu wamepewa, watu wetu. So that's why we fail. Kenya is in the ICU right now economically. Kenya is not doing very well. You know, a lot of people are wondering about the future of this country, economically, socially, and all other things. So we're asking ourselves, do we want to elect somebody who is from our tribe? Do you want to support somebody on the basis of the tribe? Or do you want the best surgeon who will remove Kenyans from the operating theater, not past the ICU, to the general ward, to living outside, to where God wants us to be? And that is where I'm running for president, to give people a chance to say, we have leadership that has experience that can actually transform this country. We are all born to live well in the pursuit of happiness. And I hope I'm going to, you know, this is not the forum, but I also ask you for your support as I try to change the mentality of Kenyans to know that we are all equal, but you can live better lives if we get good leadership.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Emily, are you happy?
Asante sana.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Dr.
indeed. Thank you very much. Very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. We've got many
apologies
other...
that I have to go, but I hope you understand.
Yes, yes, we do understand. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And we know we'll send the rest of the questions to you that we are receiving so that you know what Kenyans are saying.
And God bless.
Asante sana. And God bless you too. Kendi, maybe just to come back to you, in relation to what we are discussing about unstacking during this COVID period, what is the future of learning post-COVID? I know with Microsoft Teams being used quite a fair bit during this period, more than any other time, I guess. But also, how does that play out? How does the future of learning play out in Africa? You know, considering that our technology is getting there, is not yet there, especially in, let's say, like the rural areas. And also, I think you did have an initiative that you launched recently to help in this during this COVID and post-COVID period.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. So, like you rightly said, one of the tools that we have and which we have provided free access in this COVID time, which was ending in September, as in the free access was 6 months from March. Okay. We didn't think it would go too long, but I'm sure it will be extended for schools, was for them to be able to have access to Teams. Yeah. And using Teams, Microsoft Teams, to just facilitate learning, remote learning, where the teachers then project whatever it is they need to do to the students. Yeah. I remember when it started, it was very interesting to see my then 6-year-old, he's now 7, my 6-year-old getting on board and going all in and learning remotely. So, and I think, and then of course the sister catches on, she was 4 at the time, now turned 5, and she does her thing. So which tells you, we think children are young, or that they're not able to take some of these things, but they just need to get the opportunity and they're able to take it on. And they do it now unsupervised. That said, when we look at it from an Africa perspective, when Dr. Mutua joined, he started by saying, we now have balloons floating. Yeah. And I can confirm, because we work very closely with CS Moshero, one of the things he's very proud of and very he loves is that we can have 4G connectivity across the country. So from a connectivity perspective, we are fine. We cannot actually say we are behind, because I work with teams globally and we are able to have conversations. That is how we are also able to have this conference. It's remote and it's working. The challenge, of course, comes to the other bit where you find there are gadgets that are required. How can that be done? And I know we are actively engaging government to just see what can we do, and not just Microsoft, but the tech, high-tech companies. We've come together and seeing how can we add value and complete that. And that's part of what Peter as well, the committee is in. That's part of what they're doing. Yes. So I wouldn't want to look at ourselves as though we are behind. I would want to see like we have the opportunity and we can take it on, and the technology is there. It's ready. There are those who are already doing it. There are those who are already taking on board. They're learning to the scale that we would want, maybe not, because remotely, like up country, I don't think there's much learning going on. But yes, there's room for that. And the future of learning, it's amazing. I look at some of my friends who are in the Ivy League schools, and I'm like, you go to Harvard because of the network, because of being present. You don't go to Harvard because of the coursework. It's not the motivating factor for going. So now when you have to learn remotely, then it's denied. The networking and the being on the premise and the experience is denied to you. And what does that mean? Again, we have to rethink and see what opportunity do we get. You asked a second part to that question.
Yes, that was specifically in relation to some of the initiatives that you're rolling out during COVID to support during this period.
And that's on the unstacking bit.
Yes.
So of course, being that it's Microsoft, being that we have a mission of empowerment. Yeah. One of the things we realize and that we're so passionate about is how do we help people move forward? This season, I can almost confidently say every family has been affected in that either an income has been reduced or an income has been taken away. And people are rethinking. while the default is to sit and wait and joke that I will delete 2020 from my life. And we know, we keep saying that if I'm supposed to turn 20, I'll just say, no, I'm 19 because 2020 didn't happen. But yet the reality is different. Because of the amount of time we have on our hands, it means that we can actually utilize that time to then skill up. Having recognized that as Microsoft, and I know one of the things that's been projected and one of the links that will be shared, we have a global skilling initiative where we are providing 25 million people an opportunity to skill. And Microsoft, if you did not know, owns LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a platform that you use to look for jobs, to skill on the soft side, sometimes technical sides. And so in this period, you can actually access LinkedIn courses and job seeking opportunities for free. What has been shared, if you go through that link, you will see, using again the stats that we have on LinkedIn, we've been able to look and say which careers are most on demand in this season. While others are dropping off, some are still on demand. You see that a data analyst is still required. You see that a project manager is still required. They still need sales representatives. So if you are in a profession that is being made redundant or appearing redundant at this time, there's a path. If you click on one of those links, there's a whole 50 hours worth of training that will help you actually go to a new path. And it could be that you increase your skill, because who said you can't be a doctor and know how to sell? So you can still be a doctor who knows how to position. So you look at, how do I learn to be a sales representative? So you're just helping yourself further. So instead of sitting and count and thinking, let's waste the time, let's stick on this, think about making yourself more relevant. And if you think that people are sitting, doing nothing globally, I want to just give you some of the statistics that we've seen. And this was in May for us. This is after, this is actually before we made these platforms available. So one, I just mentioned LinkedIn, so we know LinkedIn. The other one is GitHub. GitHub is also part of Microsoft. GitHub is for developers. So you know how we were saying that there's a problem in the society that you need technology to solve. You need to learn how to be a developer, how to use technology to solve that problem. If you go to GitHub, you can actually train and be able to have it. The other is Microsoft Learning. Microsoft Learning, if you know about Azure, some of the products that we have, and yet Microsoft, we are primarily a partnership company, meaning we work wholly through partners. We don't sell even to government directly or to corporates directly. We need people on the ground to understand our technology so that they can go and position on our behalf. So even for Microsoft Learning, you actually get the opportunity to skill yourself. So with all those three platforms, having known that, now if I give you the statistics, when we look at GitHub, where the developers, we have about 15 million developers in it. In the month of May alone, year on year, the growth of the people who would access was up by about 900%, which tells you, well, we may be sitting in Kenya here, we are sitting waiting for the year to just disappear. There are those who are saying, let me use this opportunity to grow myself. If you look at the Microsoft Learning, grew by 475% year on year. That's for the month of May. That is even before this was made available for free. If you look at LinkedIn, the access and the online courses, which are over 16,000 online courses, that grew by over 380%. Again, it's just to challenge us and be like, we think we have it bad. No, there are those who are using the opportunity to just rise up, to go to the next level, to get unstuck.
Wow. So we shouldn't be sitting pretty waiting for the year to end, because a lot of people are doing amazing things out there. And I think you're right. I mean, it's not just about watching Netflix and, you know, it's really about what can I do with the time that I have been given, the time that I have available to better myself. Very quickly, Wawera, I know now we're really running out of time, but with schools closed, how are you leveraging? I think you talked about it briefly, but also what does scale look like in the scheme of things?
So with schools closed, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, our only clientele actually is in schools. And one of the biggest impact we had was, having to reimagine how food distribution looks like when you don't have schools which aggregate children per se. So where children meet in schools, that is not happening anymore. So one of the things is since March, we've been distributing food packages to kids and their families. So we've distributed over 1.7 million meals in food packages to kids and their families since March. And this has really been thinking a lot about, changing distribution channels. So from, having schools which are your main distribution point to now moving towards essentially the community and thinking about how you can reach kids and their families where they are, where they live, which is different because we essentially knew where children go to school, but we didn't know exactly their house number. So mapping, where kids live and mapping distribution points in relation to that has been something that we've been doing since March. And also thinking about how to continue supporting children throughout this period. So one of the things is that we distributed food packages while lockdown was happening. So we did that through 2 phases. We also distributed cash transfers to families. Around 1,000 families got 3 months of cash support, and then 5,000 families got the food packages that we delivered. And continuing towards January, we're now distributing food as lockdown has been eased, but still maintaining safe measurements. So we're looking at targeting around we're targeting 30,000 children with a goal of reaching 100,000 by the end of next year. So when schools resume, we're still continuing with our mission, continuing to build central kitchens and continuing to distribute meals from them. One of the things in the theme of unstucking and thinking about how to kind of think about a barrier and how you can overcome it. I mean, for us, it was easy for us to say, schools are closed, so but we really had to imagine in terms of what is our motive, what is our goal, and it is to ensure that kids are continuing to eat. Kids are growing properly, are getting the right nutrition. Growth for kids doesn't stop because there's a pandemic. Their brains don't stop developing because there's a pandemic. Their arms, their legs, their muscles, everything. And it happens even in light of the pandemic. We did a survey actually, and we found around 60% to 80% of our parents had lost all income. And we also did height and weight of a lot of the kids that we're working with, BMIs, and found that a lot of them are borderline underweight. So, and some are already underweight. So nutrition is really key in terms of the irreversibility of the effects and how we need to counter for that during a pandemic. So it's been a lot of rethinking, especially how to technology to distribution centers, to map where children live, to connect to distribution centers, help their families. So a lot of thinking about how to tweak, a lot of sleepless nights, but I think that one of the things is making sure that you remain relevant even during the pandemic means that after the pandemic or as years, there will still be a mission that we have, which is a 25.
That there's a lot of data that you've been able to collect that you possibly wouldn't have been able to if things had remained the same. And that data is going to be useful in the future, knowing where the children stay, for example, knowing what the homesteads are like, is giving you information and possibly also opening up a new line to be able to support these children to be the best version of themselves. Very quickly, as we get into the Q&A section, I know we've really run out of time, but a pertinent question for you, Peter, is very quickly, what was it like taking the big leap? I know you did mention it briefly, but just wanting to know when you are taking what are some of the things that we consider as we are leaving? So if I'm in employment and I'm looking to leave to start something new or even going into a new job, just very quickly as you give us also your closing remarks so that then we can pick a few questions for you from the audience.
No, thank you so much. And also what I've been doing is I've been answering the questions as they come in. So I hope at least,
that's wonderful.
So just very quickly, I think for me, looking at where I was in my career, I was president for West and Central Africa, and I had done that for 3 years, and my contract was actually coming to a close. So, but most probably my next role was going to be in North America, maybe heading up one of the business units there. And what I did is I looked at in terms and what it is that I wanted to achieve, because I think it's very important for us to have a purpose. Because the thing is that, you know, we shouldn't be looking at life as being very transient, like, you know, you're just passing time. So my purpose was, how can I leverage what that I know so far to actually impact the continent, the African continent, and what can I do to actually solve some of the problems that we have? So that for me was what was really pulling me towards this direction. But the other thing also is, I started 𝗺𝗂𝗥 6 years ago. I actually started my journey with 𝗺𝗂𝗥 as CEO last year, which means that I had run the company for 5 years remotely as a side hustle. Before then, I could then transition into it full time. So what I'd encourage people, especially those who are looking at transitioning into this, is one, is try and start something, leverage the current income that you have to then finance that business. Because the thing is that, you know, when you start a business or when you leave employment to then say, okay, let me now figure out what it is that I'm going to do. The thing is that there's, of course, as I mentioned, huge challenges around access to finance. Yeah. So how can you leverage your current income to then start the business? And then during that period, how do you then also create partnerships that allow that business to thrive? For me, I'm very fortunate that I was able to partner with Grant, who's my co-founder in 𝗺𝗂𝗥. And Grant was able to run the business while I was in full-time employment. And through that partnership, it then allowed us then to then build this sustainable business. So for me, that was the fortune that I had at that particular point in time. But what I would say is that, you know, figure out ways in which you can then leverage your current position to then start that business so that you can then determine the right time to transition into full-time focus of that particular business. And for me, that's essentially what I did last year. And I think in closing, what I would say is that throughout this whole process, I think one of the key things that I would encourage people to do is to step back and look at it in terms of, if the world is becoming extremely competitive, if the world is becoming extremely complex, how am I building my knowledge? How am I building my relevance in this particular world? And how am I then going to improve access to the information that I need to make myself, or to build myself perform, or to build myself to perform at the level at which I will then maybe create that transformation or build that relevance for myself. So, and that's why I started by saying in the beginning that for me, access is about access to knowledge, access to empowerment, access to enlightenment that helps me transform my thinking and my way of, the way in which I view the world, to then build relevance and build competitiveness going forward. So, but thank you so much. This has been a very, very exciting panel, and I hope at least my comments or my time here has been useful. Thank you.
It has been very, and thank you so much even for just letting us know how important it is to blend both what we learn from the corporate sector and using that to benefit all. Very quickly, I'll ask the MCs to give us the questions. They possibly have some that we can, since we have you online, that maybe we can start with you, Peter. Emily, do you have the questions for Peter that we can start with?
Great, thank you very much for that wonderful, wonderful engagement. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, what an amazing conversation. 2 hours, power-packed with mind-blowing insights. I hope you are sufficiently inspired, challenged, and unstuck to go forth and pursue your vision. I hope this we're going to go straight into the Q&A segment. Indeed, there's been a lot of amazing questions, and we will sample a few of them in the interest of time. I will ask every single panelist one question and request that they all take time to answer each question. So I will start with Peter and Njonjo. The question comes from Joy. From recent reports by AFDB, Africa has around 6 hectares of uncultivated arable land, roughly 60% of the global total and future bread basket of the world, but currently spends an estimated $35 billion per year on importing food, with the figure projected to shoot up to $110 billion by 2025. This is because we are importing what we should actually be producing. We are exporting our raw goods outside the continent to be processed into consumer products imported back into Africa for purchase. Mr. Njonjo, how do we change this quite unfortunate narrative? I'll move on to Wawera. Wawera, your question is, a lot of people want to know how they can partner with you. Indeed, you have an ambitious projection to reach 100,000 children next year. Please share with us how people can come on board and partner with you to feed the future generation of this country. Third question is to Kendi. And Kendi, your question comes from Evelyn. How can Kenya and Africa position themselves as global leaders in technology in general or in specific niche areas? And my final question will be addressed by our convener, Pastor Angie. The question is from Aisha, and the question is, if we are to initiate the change as Africans, what actionable steps can we take to initiate that change and do it steadily? So over to you, Peter and Njonjo.
So thank you so much. I think one of the things that plagues our continent is low productivity of our agriculture. I just want to give you an example. In Kenya today, we import about 650,000 metric tons of rice every year. And when you look at, and most of this rice, by the way, is coming from Pakistan and Thailand. But if I look at 𝗺, you know, many of us growing, we heard about the 𝗺 irrigation scheme. So the productivity in 𝗺 is 263 kilograms of rice per acre. The yield that you get in the US is 4,000 kilograms an acre. That's close to 15x or 10x. Just, you can do the math. And that's a challenge. How do you then, it's cheaper to import rice, having traveled halfway around the world to Kenya, clear it and ship it to Nairobi, and you'd still be cheaper than rice that is produced in 𝗺. And that's the issue that we have with our agriculture. We're not efficient. And the whole idea here is around, and I think a lot of us, you know, we more or less look at the whole conversation around smallholder farmers. And smallholder farmers, it's a good conversation to have from an empowerment standpoint, but it's not a good conversation to have from a food security standpoint, because smallholder farmers will never be as efficient as the large scale in the world. So the conversation here has large scale farming projects to feed about 8,000 acres of farms that we've now transitioned from maybe export-oriented farming to actually domestic farming. And the whole idea here is we need to get more people producing commercially in Kenya or in Africa. And just to give you context, maybe a lot of people were like, you know what, maybe there isn't enough capital to farm locally. 4 months ago, we put out an advert in the newspaper. This was a quarter page. And what we said is that we want to get access to farmers with 50 plus acres and ability to finance their own piece of land. And by the way, we were looking at attracting about 4,000 acres of land. We attracted 60,000 acres of land. That's the amount of land people were coming and saying, by the way, I have a farm and I have a capital, but I don't have the market. And that's the big issue that we're facing, is that we do not have structured access to the local domestic market. And that's the thing for us as Twiga. We want to create this structured access to the domestic market. If you're farming, you don't want to start trying to figure out how do I sell my produce to 180,000 retailers. How can you then sell all this produce to one party who then distributes this food to all these parties? And I think that for us is how we then need to solve the issue. We need to aggregate our informal retail using technology, and provide that structured access to the domestic market that starts unlocking opportunities around agriculture on the continent. And I think that for us is the biggest issue that we see in terms of unlocking our arable land on the continent.
𝗺𝗏, I think you go next.
Thank you so much for convening this amazing conference and for everyone who was part of it, the panelists and for the attendees. I saw some questions and then missed them because I got logged out. But to the question of how to partner, for us, you know, you just go to our website, www.food4education.org. You can partner by volunteering, by donating, as we look at, you know, setting up to 100,000 meals a day next year, and then reaching 1 million kids by 2025. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final question was to you, Kendi.
So the question was, how can Africa be a global leader in tech, even though it's in niche areas? When I started out, I said, as Microsoft, we take our brand value and share it with startups that can be scaled. So let me explain. We probably have heard of 𝗵𝗂𝗏. 𝗵𝗂𝗏 was a startup with just 2 people. They approached Microsoft and said, we need to build a tech business and we need you to help us. So we worked with them, and just like Twiga Foods, 𝗵𝗂𝗏 has about 1,000, if not more, employees right now.
Wow.
So what I would advise is this: look at the problem you're solving, understand it thoroughly. If there's one thing we take out from this session, is Peter understands the problem he's solving. He has information, whatever you ask, he has it to the detail.
Yeah.
If you understand that problem, which is a problem statement, whether it's social or whatever, then figure out how the tech can help you solve it. Then have a startup which can show that it can scale. Companies like Microsoft are looking for those startups that they can help scale. You don't only become a business for your village or for Kenya or for Africa, but we will take your business and bring you to other markets, similar markets. The next most likely would be an Asia, and that's what we call the global south, because you find the characteristics are almost the same. Yeah. So in summary, understand the problem, understand how tech can help you solve that, then bring it, we work together, we'll help you, we put in kind, and we put in the skill in kind. We have grants that we have, many things. We have a full for Africa startup engagement engine. And we can send the information later on how you can, if you have an idea, how you can work with us for that. I could argue actually that Twiga Foods on one end is actually a tech company, because they use technology to facilitate and solve problems around agriculture. And where we are going in the future, it will be tech companies solving real problems.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that. And I remember last week we talked about how it takes a village to raise a child, and now it's taking a village of experts, a village of organizations to just help our farmers, to help our entrepreneurs, to help just individuals during this period. Emily, I know we're really running out of time. Are you planning to do another set of questions, or are we wrapping up? Or Pastor Angie's question, sorry.
Sorry, we'll go to a second set of questions. I will start with Kendi. The question for you is, and this is from Dorcas, are there any ways Microsoft is working with entrepreneurs to digitize ourselves? Is there any way that Microsoft perhaps has a program or initiative that is specifically targeted at the digitization of entrepreneurs? That is for Kendi. I have a question as well for 𝗺𝗏. How did you go about finding and identifying local partners and stakeholders that helped you grow food for education to what it is today? How did you go about identifying these local partners? And a question for Mr. Njonjo. On a personal level, what is it that ended, or what was the end point that propelled you to the 𝗺𝗃𝗧 beginning? What was the end point for the beginning of 𝗺𝗃𝗧? What fears and challenges did you have to overcome to realize the 𝗺𝗃𝗧 dream? So we'll start off with Kendi, and then we'll have Wawera and Peter Njonjo.
So especially in this COVID season, you find we have made available our tech for enterprises, for SMEs, for schools, for anyone who actually just needs tech to be able to continue working. Our aim is to have the economy get back to itself, to its feet as fast as possible. And that is why any area we can, if you need any tech for you to just digitize and be able to work remotely or be able to support or continue providing your services, then the link that was sent is actually very resourceful. That would be for enterprises. For individual, the same. If you need anything that helps you get back on your feet, whether it's skills, whether it's job seeking, the whole process of interviewing and all, then the link that you have been shared, that has been shared, is very resourceful. Just read it in detail, listen to the videos as well, because they give direction on what needs to be done, on what you can do and what else you can access. Beyond that, you will have our contacts. I'll leave a way that you can access us, so that in case you need further assistance, then we're able to reach. Yeah, but everything, the tech is available to you, the support is available to you, the skills, the knowledge, everything, it's available to you.
I think for me, the question around how to identify local partners and stakeholders, and I'll add international as well. So for us, local partners, we've identified them through, it started a very organic process of, when you're starting a business or a company, you start with the people who are closest to you. Those are your first partners, the people who help you raise your first cash and your organization. So for us, that was a very organic process in terms of I started off approaching friends and family, and then now that grew up to a circle of people I didn't even know. So thinking about how that grows going forward is something I think for us, it has taken, first approaching people a lot. So I'll give you an example of, like the Ministry of Education is one of our biggest partners. The first time I went to the Ministry of Education, I said, we're doing an amazing thing, we're feeding 40 kids. And they said to me, go back and do more, because that's so little. And essentially it was a challenge to continue to grow so that they would consider us as a partner. So they said to come and talk to us when you're feeding 1,000. Now we're feeding 10,000 kids, and they're one of our strongest partners in terms of implementation. And continuously, other partners, especially from funding, from parents who are, as Joanne mentioned, who are one of our partners, has really been an issue of, yes, reaching out. So don't be afraid to reach out if you think of a potential partner. But also I think track record is your biggest friend in terms of building good partnerships and getting good stakeholders. So if you can maintain a track record of excellence, a track record of implementation. So for example, for us, we deliver lunch in school. So we deliver it at 12:40. And I have this time in my head stuck. So at 12:40, you can't deliver lunch at 1 p.m. or 12:45, because when the bell rings, children run out of class and they expect lunch. So one of the major things that we have as our key KPIs is that lunch has to be there at 12:40. And from that, we were able to secure, from that track record of schools being able to be sure that they're going to get lunch, we're able to secure one of our big partnerships, which is with Tatu City, that sponsors 4 of our schools, so through their CSR budget. So that kind of track record in terms of make sure that everything you're doing is done with excellence helps you attract more partners, and also keeping good relationships. So especially in the international funding space, making sure that you keep good relationships with your funders, with your partners, because they're the ones who recommend you to others. So that is something that has really worked for us and continues to work for us right now, and is something that I would recommend for someone who's looking to build partnerships both here and overseas.
Is Peter Njonjo still on the call? There was a question
yes,
for you.
So,
Yes,
so thank you for your question. I think for me, the thing that I had to let go is what I call the fear of failure, because that's what really helped me to transition to where I am. And I think for me, there's a quote from a famous French poet that I hold very dear, and it says that, you know, in the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me lay an invincible summer. And that for me has been something that I continue holding very dear, because one of the things that you have to let go of to have any form of success in anything that you want to do is a fear of failure. Because the day you stop trying is a day that you'll start failing. And I think for me that's the one thing that I've learned throughout my journey. So, but thank you so much. I think that was a very, very insightful question. I hope it has been useful. My answer has been useful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter and Njonjo. I will now ask Pastor Angie a question. The question for you is, if we are to initiate the change as Africans, what actionable steps can we take to initiate this change and drive progress steadily? If we are to initiate the change as Africans, what actionable steps can we take to initiate this change and drive progress steadily?
Okay, thank you so much, Macau, for the question. And you really emphasized on Africans. I think change comes whether we're Africans, non-Africans, but I'm glad that the conversation is about Africa. So I think I'll start with, we must believe that we can do it. When I watched the men who built America, and I said, the men and women who built Africa, we must believe that we can do it. We must believe in the impossible. We must see it, we must picture it, and then we must build it. I think you also need a vision board. It's very, very important. And I've seen different kinds of vision board. I've seen vision boards in Word, just Word. I've seen vision boards of Word and pictures. And I've seen vision boards of just pictures, because it's important to put the vision in front of you and place it somewhere where you can see it every day. You know, it's top of the mind. I'm a marketer in my heart, and we had top of the mind awareness. You know, we always keep something close to you so that you can always see it, and that's very important. I'm also reminded about that advertising is about informing, persuading, and reminding. And every time I see a billboard with something that looks absolutely amazing, then immediately I want to have it. You know, so advertising is powerful, and that's why the vision board will work in the same way, to inform you, to persuade you, to remind you of your vision. And then you need a coach or a mentor, somebody to hold you accountable, because I think we fail because all these things that we've never actually spoken about them, we've never shared them, we've never said, this is what I want to do. But I was going to say, on the flip side of also sharing is making sure you share with the right people, or being very sure of your own vision. Kendi said something about, like we said, Peter Njonjo knows his stuff. He knows every angle of food and technology and the supply chain and the customer. He knows it. So you have to know it and be able to share it in a way that when somebody says something negative towards it, or something that's not so encouraging, you move on. I think also Africa, because of that question of Africa, we compare a lot, we compete a lot. We say, I think I've said that before, between like something like Zoom and Microsoft and Skype, all these platforms are there. Not one of them said, I'm not going to try to do it because somebody else has done it. So I think you need to do what you need to do and focus on what you need to do. Don't compare, don't compete. And focus. And it was also encouraging for me to listen to Peter. There's a lot of sacrifice, you know, because the question talked about steady, you know, keeping the steadiness, keeping the flow, the continuity. There's a sacrifice that has to be made, and you can't lose sight of that sacrifice. You've got to keep moving forward and reminding yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? That would be my answer.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Angie, for those remarks, and really a big thank you to all our panelists and our amazing moderator. Thank you so much, Kendi. Thank you so much, Dr. Alfred in absentia. Thank you so much, Owira and Mr. Njonjo. Thank you so much for taking the time to just, you know, to be with us this morning. I'd like to then hand over back to Pastor Angie to do final remarks, and then we'll move on to the next segment. Thank you.
Wow, it's been final remarks. I'm extremely overwhelmed, and I'm trying very hard to behave myself and not start, behave myself in a manner likely to suggest that, I'm a great leader, because I just want to scream. I think Unstuck has been absolutely amazing. There's a question that was asked: is Kenya a country where dreams can come true? That one almost brought tears to my eyes. And that for me is very important in this wrap up, that we must walk away from this call and ask ourselves, is Kenya a country where dreams can come true? And the answer is yes. If only we believe, if people who had nothing made something out of that nothingness, then we have a lot more. We have a platform, we have foundations, we have access, we have technology. We really must. And the conversation about taking our eyes off ourselves is very, very important. It was great to hear the sacrifice that many of our panelists have made. They made a personal sacrifice. I think it was last week when I said, all of them, could have walked away with only themselves in place and thinking of themselves and their solution. But they took the focus off themselves and they put the focus on other people and give access to other people so that they could execute their assignment. So I think that's very, very important. I loved the facts about food and the fact that we're spending so little on food, the funding around food and agriculture at 2%. We really must have a conversation around this, and not only have a conversation, but also action. We need action to provide solutions for food and provide solutions that affect us. I think the conversation on startups as well, really somebody has to fund startups, seriously, and not just have that conversation of we're funding startups. Really look at and fund the startups, because that conversation about things like Facebook would not be platforms that are available if somebody had not provided a funding platform for them to be expressed. Then I wonder how many other ideas do we have on this continent that are just simply fading away because people have not been given the access or the access to funding to be able to execute the assignment. I remember once young people not taking up loans from a particular organization, and I asked why. And they said, I was actually very impressed with the answer. They said, because if we take up the loans, how are we going to pay it? Because it's very easy to throw money at people and throw money as a solution, but I think they need the hand holding more as well as the money. They need somebody to mentor them, to guide them, to say, take 3 steps this way, because it's something that you haven't ever done. So the mentoring aspect, even that Kendi is doing, is very it's a good thing, because you can't just, okay, show me the money, here's my idea, but I'm afraid I want to take this step. Do I turn left? Do I turn right? What do I do when I get to this point? I've learned so much from all the panelists today and last Saturday, that maybe somebody else doesn't have this access to this information and they need it. So not only giving us access to funding, but access to mentorship, access to coaching, show me how to do it, modeling, exercises. It's amazing. And I think one challenge that I'll wrap up with is the challenge that Dr. Alfred Mutua gave, and said that he's running for president. I'm sure a lot of people are like, I don't know whether we're going to do this thing, but you have to dig deep into yourself and find out, why wouldn't you support him as a presidential candidate? Looking at his track record, and this is not, he didn't pay me to say this, by the way, I better say that. He doesn't even know I'm going to say this, but why wouldn't we want to support him in his venture? We must support him with his venture. I love the conversation around ecosystems. We have talked about ecosystems as a community for a while, but I'm loving that we're taking this conversation of the ecosystem to the next level. And wow, so much has been said. People are giving me more work, as they usually do. Now they want Unstuck masterclasses every Saturday. I don't see that might not be a possibility, but I know that we want to start Unstuck masterclasses, because we have to have more conversations around access. We can't just stop there. We started something, and we need to keep flowing, and we need to keep driving it, and we need to keep talking to one another. So that's my wrap up of today. It's amazing also that people try. Just try. You must try, because everybody I've listened to, all the enterprises, all the people, all the leaders, they just tried. And I would love to say also, it's encouraging to see that Africa has leaders. I mean, we've just had, I think, 4 of them today and 3 of them last week, including even the moderators and the leaders who planned this. But my goodness, Africa has potential, and we must ride on that potential, and we must deliver results for this continent and for generations. So God bless you greatly. I think we should pray, but please don't log off after my prayer because they want to give a vote of thanks and they have other information that they'd like to give you. But it is important. I think a lot of people, there's one Unstuck, I didn't pray. Hey, there was uproar. You know, also people are very entitled to, what do you mean she didn't pray? So let me pray. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for the conversations that we've had around access. Absolutely amazing conversations, Lord. We want to decree your glory into every word, every conversation, every thought, the things that you have started and thought process that you have started in the people, the mindset changes and the mindset shifts that you have begun, Father. May you not let them die down. May you propel people into action, Father. May you propel them into envisioning and propel them into action. In the name of Jesus Christ. We pray that you bring the right people around them, Father, to support and to execute their visions, to turn their dreams into a reality. I pray for every person that is stuck to get unstuck in the name of Jesus Christ. I also have a sense that this conversation doesn't end here, that as we gather, as we flow during the weekend and the rest of this, the time that we have for this year, may these conversations become conversation starters. May people talk about how to get unstuck, and may those who have access to anything that we may need, whether it is spiritually, solically, physically, socially, financially, professionally, in leadership and governance of self and others, and in different geographical locations. May you give people access. May you open doors. May you give opportunities. May you understand the place of sacrifice. May you understand that nobody may thank you, but God will. So provide access, provide leadership, open doors, think through ideas, and think through what is possible. I want to pray that we envision, begin to see things that look impossible, that the world tells us are impossible, but we can action. We pray for encouragement. We pray that these words that the panelists have spoken to us will continue to resonate within our spirits. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Over to you, Daniel.
All right, thank you so much, Pastor Angie, for putting that final word on such an impactful conversation. And I do hope that people are signing up immediately after this session for the PLF online class. Remember, we have a one-time launch discount offer only for this month of August, so please take advantage of that. And a reminder to visit our website, that's www.unstuckconference.org. And for me, some of the things that stood out from this panel, Peter and Jonjo sold their matrimonial home to fund their passion and solve this problem that they could see. Just how committed are you to your passion? Dr. Alfred Butoa mentioned that there are people who their work is to put others down. And indeed, partnership is a language of now and the future. From Wawera talking about raising money from her friends and her family bootstrapping, and years later now, the funding has grown 10x, tenfold from where she started. The funding journey is intimidating, but she got it done, and so can you. You can start. And from Kendi, when your passion is out there, people will come on board. I love that. Build and the partners will come. The point is, from everyone, is start. Wow, one is left asking, what next? Well, we have just the thing for you. Do look out for our Unstuck Masterclasses coming up. We have heeded your requests. We have heard you. Look out for more engagement. We will be communicating more to you so that you can register for this. The masterclasses will have a limited number of participations. So when you see it, please sign up quickly. If you're interested, register early. We will have the first masterclass towards the end of September, and we will be sharing this information and much more on the Unstuck website. Once more, www.unstuckconference.org. Allow me now to move our vote of thanks. And please be patient with me. There's a lot to say. I would love to begin by thanking the Almighty God for allowing us to be here today, not just physically, but digitally as well. We live in an amazing time where even during a pandemic, we're able to connect over the internet, and I thank God for that. I'd like to thank our panelists for engaging with us and sharing their experiences so openly and authentically. A big thank you to Kendi, to Dr. Alfred, to Wawera, and to Peter and Jonjo. If we're all in the same room, we'll be standing up right now, just standing ovation to all of you. Thank you so much for sacrificing your time and coming to share your wisdom with us. To Joanne, you have done an amazing job pulling out those nuggets from our panel. Thank you so much for moderating with excellence. I can see a career change for you. I can see something new for you there. And to Pastor Angie Murenga, our convener, thank you for hosting this event. We are because you are. And thank you to the audience for trusting us with your time. It's a lot of time on a Saturday morning, but thank you for trusting us with your time. I do hope that this has been especially useful to you. We hope to see tweets and posts of nuggets that you have observed from today's session. Thank you once more. I'm sure we'll see you in the master classes and in the PLF online classes as well. We would like to also thank our vendors and service suppliers. We would not have executed this vision without you. There's a gentleman called John Kinuthia from Pipes with Purpose. That's the name of the business, who has made some amazing, amazing art pieces for us. He basically, I don't know if you can see this, I hope you can see it. He basically repurposes these items. These are normally used, for building, getting water into your taps, but he's repurposed them to these beautiful art pieces that are used, in very many places. And we just thank you so much for your creativity and for partnering with us. To Facebook, our sponsors for online boosting, to Archer Digital for our digital implementation, to Leroy Malu, who did so much work for us on the graphic side, to Ishmael for the video animation, to Starab for the beautiful furniture that you see in the main set there, and to Expose, who have supported us greatly in making sure that we have all the technology that we need. There's also African Book Hub, and you can follow a link to see what they have, the African Book Hub. Have a look at it and see what they have there. They usually partner with us at all our events to provide books. There's a lot of wisdom in the books, so please do that. This event would also not have been possible without the individual and corporate contribution from various sponsors. And so a big thank you to Facebook, to Apostle Angie, to Daniel, to Jemima, to Joanne, to Nina, to Emily, to Fenny, to George and Winnie Thara, thank you. Dr. Maria Walker, thank you. To Caroline Banacho, Evelyn Gatia, Lucy Nderi, and the Kingdom Business Solutions and the Just Angie platform. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, it is said that behind every successful man, there's certainly a woman. Well, I've been privileged to lead a team of 8 amazing ladies as we put together this event over the last year. And so my final thank you is to this amazing team, to Jemima Bariu, Joanne Kimani, Nina Bola, Emily Kinuthia, Feni Nyamunga, Dorcas Karanja, Jackie Kimeo, and Evelyn Gatia. We would not have done this if we weren't all there. Thank you so much, and God bless you. I'd like to now hand over to Emily for the closing word.
Wow, indeed, what an amazing engagement we've had over the last 2 Saturdays, and indeed one that is very relevant to all of us, especially in these uncertain times we are living in. My biggest takeout, I know there's been amazing nuggets shared across the breadth of panelists we've had, but the word access for me is synonymous to 2 sides of the same coin. One is the ability, gift, talent that you possess that enables you to go forth and serve others. Think of it as a key to a door that unlocks that potential or potential for opportunities and offers solutions to others. But then there is another side to this coin. When you stand in front of a door with a key, you have the power to open the door, which is the key. However, once you use the key, you have to take an action to go through the door. You must push through that door to get to the other side. In fact, if you turned the key through in the keyhole and never pushed the door, you would have opened the door successfully, but not accessed what is on the other side of the door. So today, I want to challenge you to confront that which stands in your way. You have the key in your hand, which is your gift, your talent, your purpose, but you must push the door. You must confront whatever is standing in your way. Is it fear? Is it doubt? Is it insecurities? Feelings of not being enough? Is it things that have been said about you? The fear of failure, as was mentioned by Mr. Njonjo, letdowns, past mistakes, lack of education. You feel you don't know anyone, you are not connected, lack of money, the list is endless. Whatever it is, you must confront it, push it aside, call forth the greatness in you. Why is this so important? Because the breakthrough, transformation, and the answers to the world's problems today stand at the end of your willingness to step out in obedience. So confront your door, push through, and access your next. My name is Emilie Kinuthia, and it has been a great pleasure to host you today, together with my amazing co-MC, Daniel Macau, and the entire UNSTUCK team. We bid you farewell. Thank you for engaging us, and stay blessed. Asante sana.